The car is still, but the world is not. Red tail lights bleed into the rain-slicked asphalt ahead, a seemingly infinite river of steel and frustration. The radio murmurs something about the economy, the same story as yesterday. The phone in your hand feels heavy, a portal to a world of curated perfection and manufactured outrage, a world you just scrolled through for the last 10 minutes without seeing a single thing. A familiar feeling settles in, not a sharp pain, but a dull, persistent ache, a sense of being stuck, not just in this traffic, but in a larger pattern you can't quite name. The day behind you was a blur of deadlines and demands, and the evening ahead promises a few hours of tired distraction before you do it all over again. Yesterday felt like this, and you have a quiet, sinking feeling that tomorrow will be the same. This experience, this low hum of dissatisfaction, is not a personal failure. It is a fundamental condition of our modern life. We are caught in a powerful current, a flow of expectation, consumption, and constant noise. We are taught to seek happiness outside of ourselves, in the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase. We chase these things, and for a moment, we might even catch them. But the satisfaction is fleeting, a ghost of a flavor, and soon the old hunger, the old restlessness, returns. This is the cycle. This is the dream state we live in, a form of sleepwalking where we are pulled along by invisible currents of cause and effect, repeating the same reactions, chasing the same mirages, and bumping into the same walls of suffering, all while believing we are fully awake and in control. But what if there was a way to wake up from this dream, not by escaping our lives, not by renouncing the world, but by learning to see it, and ourselves, with new eyes? There exists an ancient and profoundly practical path for this awakening. It is the wisdom of Zen, a timeless science of the mind that offers not a dogma to believe in, but a set of tools to work with. This journey is not about becoming a different person. It is an invitation to gently and compassionately investigate the life you already have. It is a guide to understanding the unseen currents that shape your experience, and to discover that even in the midst of the chaos, there is a source of profound peace and freedom waiting to be uncovered, right here, within you. The journey begins not with a grand revelation, but with a quiet admission. It is the acknowledgement of a feeling so constant, so familiar, that we often fail to even notice it is there, much like the low hum of a refrigerator in a silent house. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this feeling is called dukkha. The most common translation of this word is suffering, but this single word is too heavy, too dramatic. It conjures images of tragedy, of immense pain and loss. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its true meaning is far more subtle, far more pervasive. It is the echo in the mind, the background static of our lives. A better translation might be dissatisfaction or unease. It is the inherent friction that exists between our desires and the way things actually are. It is the feeling that something is just slightly out of alignment, that things are not quite right. It is the quiet strain of holding on and the subtle ache of pushing away. This is the true face of dukkha in our modern world, and it wears 1,000 different masks. Consider the dukkha of our professional lives. It is not necessarily the burden of hard labor, but the quiet anxiety of the unread email, the pressure to be constantly available, to be productive not just from 9 to 5, but in a way that permeates our entire consciousness. It is the feeling of sitting in a meeting, under fluorescent lights, discussing projections and deliverables, while a part of you quietly asks, "Is this it? Is this what I am meant to be doing with my one precious life?" It's the gap between the person you are in the office and the person you feel you are, or could be. It is the subtle, draining effort of maintaining a professional persona, of smiling when you are tired, of showing enthusiasm for tasks that feel meaningless. This constant, low-grade stress is a powerful form of dukkha. It is not a catastrophe, it is a slow leak of our vital energy, a quiet erosion of our spirit that we have come to accept as normal. We call it ambition, we call it professionalism, we call it the price of success, but at its root, it is the friction of a life that is not in harmony with itself. Then there is the dukkha of the future. Our minds have evolved to be magnificent planning machines, but in an age of constant information and perceived instability, this machinery has gone into overdrive. We live in a state of perpetual anticipation, but so often that anticipation is tinged with fear. We run endless simulations of what could go wrong. Will I have enough money to retire? Will my children be safe? What if I get sick? This constant stream of anxious forecasting is a form of self-inflicted dukkha. We are suffering from calamities that have not yet happened and may never happen. We are living in a story of a future that exists only in our imagination, and this story drains the vitality from the only moment that is ever real, the present. We are haunted by the ghosts of tomorrow, and this haunting prevents us from fully inhabiting our own lives today. The world bombards us with reasons to be afraid, and our minds willingly take up the task, building elaborate prisons of worry, all while the simple reality of our breathing, of the chair supporting us, of the light in the room, goes completely unnoticed. Perhaps the most insidious form of dukkha in our time is the dukkha of comparison, an ancient poison now delivered through the hyper-efficient syringe of social media. With every scroll, we are invited to measure our own messy, complex, behind-the-scenes reality against the perfectly curated highlight reels of others. We see their beautiful vacations, their successful careers, their happy families, their perfect bodies, and with each image, a tiny voice inside us whispers, "You are not enough. Your life is not as exciting. You are not as successful. You are not as happy." This is dukkha in its purest form. It is a suffering born entirely of a mental construct. We are comparing our inner world, with all its doubts and insecurities, to someone else's outer presentation. It is an unwinnable game, designed to create a sense of lack, a feeling of falling behind in a race that has no finish line. And so we find ourselves feeling lonely in a crowd, disconnected, despite being constantly connected, because the connections we are making are not with real, flawed human beings, but with polished avatars that only serve to amplify our own perceived flaws. Faced with this pervasive hum of dissatisfaction, what is our typical response? We seek refuge, we run, we try to numb the ache, to drown out the static. When the stress of work becomes too much, we lose ourselves in a television series for an entire weekend. When the loneliness creeps in, we fill the void with the temporary pleasure of online shopping, the cart, a fleeting stand-in for a full heart. When the anxiety about the future bubbles up, we grab our phones and scroll, 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 seeking any novel distraction to pull our attention away from the discomfort. We eat when we are not hungry, we drink when we are not thirsty, we talk when we have nothing to say. These are our anesthetics. But anesthesia does not cure the wound, it merely postpones the feeling of it. And in the process of running, we expend enormous amounts of energy. The distraction itself becomes a form of exhaustion. And when the series ends, when the package has been delivered, when we finally put down the phone, the original feeling of dukkha is still there, waiting for us, often accompanied by a new layer of regret or emptiness. Our strategy of avoidance does not work. It only reinforces the belief that the feeling itself is unbearable, something to be fled from at all costs. This very act of running is what gives the dukkha its power over us. The Buddha told a simple and profound story to illustrate this point. It is the parable of the two arrows. He said that to live is to be struck by the first arrow, This arrow is the unavoidable pain of human existence. It is sickness, loss, disappointment, old age, and death. It is the critical comment from your boss, the unexpected bill in the mail, the traffic jam when you are already late. These things happen. They are part of the landscape of life, and no amount of meditation or positive thinking can make you immune to them. The first arrow is, in a sense, not personal. It is simply reality. The real problem, the source of our deepest suffering, is the second arrow. The second arrow is the one we shoot into ourselves. After being struck by the first arrow of a painful event, we react. We generate a story. This is terrible. Why does this always happen to me? I can't handle this. My day is ruined. My life is unfair. This commentary, this resistance, this layer of mental and emotional baggage we add to the initial event. This is the second arrow. Its poison is not in the event itself, but in our relationship to it. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is suffering. The first arrow is dukkha as an unavoidable condition. The second arrow is dukkha as a personal creation. So much of our lives are spent reeling from the impact of these self-inflicted wounds. We are so busy telling the story of our pain that we don't realize we are the authors of it. We blame the first arrow, the external event, for our suffering, but it is the second arrow, our internal reaction, that truly causes the deep and lasting harm. The wisdom of this path does not lie in learning how to dodge all the first arrows of life. That is impossible. The wisdom lies in learning not to shoot the second arrow. It is learning to feel the sting of the first arrow, to acknowledge its presence, without adding the story, the judgment, the resistance. This leads us to the first, most courageous step on this entire journey. It is the simple, yet radical, act of turning around to face the feeling of dukkha directly. It is the willingness to stop running, to put down the distractions, and to gently, and with curiosity, acknowledge the hum of dissatisfaction. It is not about wallowing in misery or becoming pessimistic. It is a clean, scientific act of observation to simply say, ah, there it is. The feeling of anxiety, the tightness in the chest, the story of not being good enough. To observe it without immediately trying to fix it, without blaming anyone for it, and most importantly, without judging yourself for feeling it. This is the beginning of freedom. By simply allowing the feeling to be there, without shooting the second arrow of resistance, you begin to strip it of its power. You see that it is just a feeling, just a collection of sensations and thoughts, as impermanent as a cloud passing in the sky. You learn that you are larger than your dukkha. You are the sky, not the cloud. You are the awareness that can hold the pain without becoming the pain. We have now looked at the symptom. We have given it a name. We see it in our work, in our worries, in our comparisons, and we see how our attempts to escape it only make it stronger. We understand that much of our suffering is not caused by life itself, but by our reaction to it. We have identified the disease. The next logical step is to understand its cause. If the second arrow is the mechanism of our suffering, what is the poison that tips its head? What is the fuel that drives this engine of dissatisfaction? The answer to that question lies in understanding three fundamental patterns of the mind, known as the three poisons. And it is to these deep roots of our repeated suffering that we must now turn our attention. If the feeling of dukkha, that pervasive dissatisfaction, is the sting from the second arrow, we must now look more closely at the poison that tips its head. Why do we shoot that second arrow? What is the force, the impulse within us that reacts to the pains of life with such resistance and storytelling? The wisdom of Zen points to a powerful, internal engine, a psychological dynamo that generates the energy for almost all of our suffering. This engine runs on three types of fuel, known collectively as the three poisons. They are the deep, often unconscious roots of our repetitive loops of behavior. These are not sins, not moral failings to be judged, but fundamental patterns of the mind, ancient energies that we must learn to understand if we are ever to find freedom. They are greed, aversion, and delusion. The first poison is greed, or in the ancient Pali language, lobha. When we hear the word greed, we typically think of a desire for money, for possessions, for power, and it certainly is that. Our entire consumer culture is a monument to this poison, a system built on creating a perpetual sense of lack, a constant whisper that you will finally be happy if you just acquire this one more thing. The new phone, the faster car, the bigger house. This is the most obvious face of greed, the endless hunger for more. It is the mindset of a ghost with a tiny throat and a massive stomach, able to swallow everything but never feel full. But the poison of greed runs much deeper than material wanting. Its more subtle and powerful form is attachment. It is the clinging not just to things, but to experiences, to ideas, and to our very sense of self. It is the desire to hold on to a moment of pleasure, to freeze it in time and prevent it from changing. When you have a wonderful day and you find yourself desperately wishing it would never end, that is the subtle work of greed. When you receive praise and crave more of it, replaying the words in your mind, that is the clinging of attachment. It is the frantic effort to build a dam to stop the river of time, to grasp a handful of water and be surprised when it slips through your fingers. This energy is one of pulling toward, of contracting around something we like. It is the constant murmur of, I want, I need, I must have. We are attached to our opinions, believing them to be the absolute truth. We are attached to our roles, as a parent, a professional, an artist. And when those roles are challenged, we feel as if our very existence is under threat. This clinging, this desperate grasping at that which is by its nature fleeting, is a primary source of our self-created suffering. The second poison is aversion, or dosa. It is the opposite energy of greed, but it is born from the same root. If greed is the act of pulling things toward us, aversion is the act of violently pushing them away. Its most obvious face is anger, hatred, and irritation. It is the flash of rage at the driver who cuts you off, the simmering resentment toward a colleague, the frustration at an inanimate object that isn't working properly. But again, its manifestation is far broader and more subtle than these explosive emotions. Aversion is any form of resistance to what is. It is the feeling of dread on a Sunday evening as you think about the work week ahead. It is the desire to avoid a difficult conversation. It is the subtle judgment that arises when you see someone who dresses or speaks differently than you. It is the harsh criticism you level against yourself when you make a mistake. It is the I don't want, I don't like, get it away from me energy that contracts our bodies and minds. Greed and aversion are two sides of the same coin of preference. The mind divides the world into two categories: things I want to pull closer and things I want to push away. Both are a declaration of war on reality. Both are a demand that the universe conform to our personal and constantly shifting preferences. We spend our lives like a person in a river, frantically trying to grab the beautiful, floating flowers while desperately trying to bat away the dead leaves and mud, never realizing that both are simply part of the river's flow. This constant battle, this pushing and pulling, is utterly exhausting, and it is a core dimension of dukkha. These two poisons, greed and aversion, the pulling and the pushing, are powerful forces, but they do not arise from nothing. They both grow from the soil of the third and most fundamental poison. This is delusion, or moha, which is also translated as ignorance. Now, this does not mean ignorance in the sense of being unintelligent or uneducated. A person can have multiple PhDs and still be deeply trapped in the poison of delusion. Moha is a fundamental misperception of reality. It is a cognitive fog that prevents us from seeing the true nature of ourselves and the world. The absolute core of this delusion is the unwavering, unexamined belief in a solid, separate, and permanent self. We have a deeply ingrained feeling that there is a little person, a chief executive, sitting in the command center of our heads. We call this I, me, and mine. This I is believed to be the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, and the enduring center of our experience. From the moment we are born, this sense of a separate self becomes the gravitational center of our universe. Everything that happens is interpreted through the lens of what it means for me, and it is this very delusion that gives birth to the other two poisons. If there is a solid, separate me, then it follows that there are things that can enhance me and things that can threaten me. The things that seem to enhance the self, we become greedy for. The things that seem to threaten the self, we become averse to. Without the central delusion of a separate self to protect and promote, greed and aversion would have no ground to stand on. They would be like soldiers with no country to fight for. This ignorance, this fog of self, is the mother of all suffering. It is the reason we take things so personally. It is the reason we feel so isolated. The entire spiritual path can be described as the gradual process of seeing through this fog, of dispelling this primary delusion, not by destroying a self, but by realizing it was never the solid entity we imagined it to be. Let us see how these three poisons work together in a simple, everyday scenario. Imagine you receive an email from your manager with some constructive feedback on a project you completed. It's not harsh, but it points out a few areas for improvement. The first poison to activate is delusion. Instantly, the feedback is not seen as neutral information about a project. It is filtered through the lens of me. I am being criticized. My work is being judged. The sense of a separate, vulnerable self immediately solidifies. This delusion then gives instant birth to aversion, a flash of heat, a tightness in the stomach. This is unfair, the mind might say. She doesn't appreciate how hard I worked. You might feel a surge of defensiveness, an impulse to write back immediately explaining why the criticism is wrong. You are pushing away the unpleasant feeling of being seen as imperfect. At the exact same time, greed arises. This is the craving to restore the pleasant feeling of being seen as competent and successful. You might start thinking about all the praise you've received in the past, clinging to those memories. You might fantasize about your next project being a massive success, craving the validation that will come with it. In the space of a few seconds, a simple piece of data in an email has, through the alchemy of the three poisons, been transformed into a drama of personal suffering, a classic second arrow. This happens dozens, if not hundreds, of times a day, in ways both large and small, creating the very fabric of our repetitive stress and dissatisfaction. The pursuit fueled by these poisons is ultimately futile. There is an old story that speaks of a man who was told there was a magnificent pearl at the bottom of the ocean. He became obsessed with finding it. So he took a small teacup, went to the shore, and began to scoop the water out of the ocean, one cup at a time. He spent his entire life in this relentless, exhausting task. People would watch him, tirelessly scooping, growing old and weary. He was so focused on the emptying, so consumed by his desire for the pearl, that he never once stopped to simply learn how to swim, to dive, to explore the ocean as it was. Our relationship with desire is just like this. We believe that if we can just scoop out all the unpleasantness and scoop in all the pleasantness, we will finally find the pearl of happiness. But the ocean of want is infinite, and our teacup of satisfaction is always small. This endless chasing, this scooping and dumping, is the very definition of the loop of suffering. We have now seen the engine. We have identified the fuel of greed, aversion, and delusion that powers our reactions and keeps us trapped. We see how the central delusion of a separate self gives rise to the constant pushing and pulling that defines our lives and creates dukkha. These poisons are the motivation, the intent, the energy behind the second arrow. But what is the actual mechanism? How do these intentions, these poisoned arrows of thought and feeling, translate into the concrete reality of our lives? How do the seeds of greed and anger today grow into the forests of our experience tomorrow? The system that governs this process, the universal law that connects our inner world of intention to our outer world of experience, is known as karma. It is the machinery itself, and it is to this profound and often misunderstood law that our journey must now proceed. Having seen the engine of suffering, the three poisons of greed, aversion, and delusion, we now arrive at the machinery they operate. This is the law of karma, a concept so central to Eastern thought, yet so profoundly misunderstood in the West. The word itself conjures images of a cosmic ledger book, a celestial judge weighing our good and bad deeds, and a predetermined fate that we are powerless to change. It is crucial at the very beginning to set these ideas aside. These are distortions, layers of myth that obscure a principle as natural, as impersonal, and as reliable as the law of gravity. To understand karma is to move from being a victim of circumstance to being the creative force in your own life. The literal meaning of the Sanskrit word karma is simply action or deed. That is all. The law of karma is the law of action. It states, quite simply, that every action produces a corresponding result. For every cause, there is an effect. This is not a moralistic or mystical statement. It is a description of reality. If you plant an apple seed, you will get an apple tree. You will not get a rose bush or a pine tree. The nature of the seed determines the nature of the fruit. In the same way, our actions are seeds. Every act of body, every word we speak, every thought we think, is a seed being planted in the soil of our consciousness and the world. Wholesome actions, born of kindness, generosity, and clarity, will inevitably ripen into wholesome, positive experiences. Unwholesome actions, fueled by the three poisons, will inevitably ripen into experiences of suffering and dissatisfaction. There is no external judge involved in this process. The universe is not punishing you or rewarding you. The consequence is inherent in the action itself. If you repeatedly place your hand on a hot stove, the resulting pain is not a punishment for your foolishness. It is the natural, unavoidable consequence of the act. Karma functions in precisely the same way in the psychological and ethical realms. The suffering that results from a mind consumed by anger is not a punishment for being angry. It is the intrinsic, fiery nature of anger itself. The peace that arises from a mind cultivated in loving kindness is not a reward. It is the inherent quality of a mind of loving kindness. Understanding this shifts everything. It removes fear and superstition and replaces them with a sense of profound responsibility and empowerment. The past has created the present moment, but the present moment and how we act within it is the seed for the entire future. Here we arrive at the most vital aspect of karma, the element that gives us the power to change our lives. The Buddha stated it with perfect clarity. It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. The true seed is not the external action, but the internal intention, the will, the volition behind the action. This is a point of immense practical significance. Consider two scenarios. In the first, you are walking down the street, you accidentally stumble, and you bump into someone, causing them to drop their groceries. The external act is one of causing disruption, but your intention was nil. You feel regret, you apologize sincerely, you help them pick everything up. The karmic imprint of this action is extremely light. Now, Consider the second scenario. You see someone you dislike, and fueled by a surge of aversion, you deliberately shove them, causing them to drop their groceries. The external act is almost identical, but the internal intention is radically different. It is an act seeded with hatred and ill will. The karmic consequence of this action will be heavy, planting a potent seed of negativity within your own mind stream that will eventually ripen into a painful experience. This is how karma connects directly to the three poisons. Any action, thought, or word that is motivated by greed, aversion, or delusion is considered unwholesome karma. It plants a seed that will, in time, bear the fruit of suffering. Conversely, any action motivated by their opposites, be generosity and letting go, by loving kindness and compassion, and by wisdom and clarity eyes, considered wholesome karma. It plants a seed that will ripen into happiness and peace. This means that the primary field of our karmic work is our own mind. By learning to observe our intentions before they translate into speech or action, we can begin to consciously change the direction of our lives. We can choose to stop planting the seeds of our own misery. These karmic seeds are planted through three channels, or three doors: the door of the body, the door of speech, and the door of the mind. The actions of the body are the most obvious, from harming another being to offering a helping hand. The actions of speech are immensely powerful, capable of starting wars or healing deep wounds. A single word of cruel gossip plants a karmic seed, just as a word of genuine encouragement does. But the most fundamental and potent door is the mind. Every thought is a karmic action. A silent flash of intense hatred for someone, even if it never leaves your mind, is a complete karmic act. It poisons your own consciousness first and foremost. It strengthens the habit of hatred within you, making it more likely to arise again in the future. In this way, our inner world of thought is constantly shaping our character and, eventually, our external reality. This process is not always immediate or linear. The ripening of karma is more like farming than flipping a switch. You plant a seed, and it requires time and the right conditions to grow. Some seeds sprout quickly, others may lie dormant for years. This is why our lives can sometimes feel confusing or unfair. We might see a cruel person succeeding, or a kind person suffering, and question the law of karma. This is because we are only seeing a snapshot in time. We do not see the full history of the seeds they have planted, nor do we know which seeds are currently ripening. The most useful metaphor is to think of our life as a river. Every single action and intention, no matter how small, is like a drop of water. One drop is insignificant, but billions upon billions of drops, accumulating over days, months, and years, create a powerful current. That current is our character, our personality, our habitual tendencies. It is the momentum of our past karma. This is why we feel stuck in loops. The current we have created is so strong that it naturally pulls us in a familiar direction. To create real change feels like trying to swim against a powerful tide, because it is. But the law of karma is also our hope. For every single conscious, wholesome action we take in this moment, every time we choose patience over anger, generosity over greed, we are adding a new drop of water to the river, a drop that begins, ever so slightly, to alter its course. With sustained practice, we can change the direction of the entire river. This brings us to a final, vital point about the nature of this unseen river. Our human tendency is to immediately label its effects as good or bad. A famous Zen story illustrates the folly of this. There was an old farmer in a small village. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors all came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next week, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of 12 wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate. "What incredible good fortune," they exclaimed. The farmer quietly replied, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "How awful. Your good luck has turned to bad." The farmer, once again, said, "Maybe." A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they were fighting, a war from which few would return. The farmer's son, with his broken leg, was the only young man in the village to be spared. This story perfectly illustrates our limited view. We see only one tiny ripple in the vast, interconnected ocean of cause and effect, and we rush to judge it. We cannot possibly know the full implications of any single event. The law of karma is not a simple, linear equation we can solve. It is a web of infinite complexity. So now we have the law. Karma is the invisible river of cause and effect, powered by our intentions, shaping our reality moment by moment. It is not fate, but the momentum of our own creation. But if this is the fundamental law, why do we experience it as a cycle of suffering? Why are we swept away by its currents, tossed and turned by its waves, seemingly without any control? It is because we are fundamentally mistaken about the nature of ourselves and of the river itself. We are asleep in the flow of karma because we believe that we, and the experiences that happen to us, are solid, separate, and lasting. We are trying to stand on solid ground in the middle of a flowing river. This deep misunderstanding, this clinging to an illusion of permanence in a world that is defined by change, is the next layer of the dream we must investigate. It is the essential teaching of impermanence. We stand now before the very heart of our delusion, the central pillar of the dream state in which we live. We have seen the engine of suffering in the 3 poisons, and we have examined the machinery of that engine, the law of karma. But why are we so susceptible to this engine, so easily swept away by this machinery? It is because we are fundamentally mistaken about the nature of the ground beneath our feet. We operate under a powerful, unexamined assumption that things are solid, stable, and lasting. We believe in permanence, and most powerfully of all, we believe in the permanence of a self, an I that is the fixed center of our universe. The piercing light of Zen wisdom reveals this assumption to be an illusion. The Pali word for this truth is anicca, or impermanence. It is the first and most accessible of the great characteristics of existence. To understand anicca is to begin to wake up from the dream. Everything changes. This is the most obvious, yet most consistently ignored, truth of our lives. Look to the world outside. The seasons turn in an endless, graceful cycle. A towering oak tree begins as a tiny, vulnerable acorn. Mountains, the very symbols of solidity, are slowly but surely being worn down by wind and rain. The cities we live in are in a constant state of demolition and reconstruction. The stars in the night sky are burning out, and new ones are being born. Nothing, absolutely nothing, in the physical universe is exempt from this law. It is the fundamental rhythm of existence, a cosmic dance of arising, persisting for a time, and passing away. We know this intellectually. We see it all around us, but our hearts have not yet learned the lesson. The resistance, and therefore the suffering, begins when we turn this inquiry inward. Look at your own body. It is a river of constant change. Billions of cells are dying and being reborn in this very moment. The food you ate for lunch is being transformed into energy and tissue. The air you are breathing is becoming a part of you and then being released. The body you inhabit today is not the same physical entity it was a decade ago or even a year ago. It is a process, not a possession. Yet, we cling to it. We cling to youth, horrified by the first gray hair or wrinkle. We cling to health, terrified by the prospect of sickness and decay. We invest so much of our identity in this temporary collection of elements, and so we live in a state of low-grade anxiety, fighting a battle against time that we can never, ever win. This fight against the anika of the body is a primary source of our dukkha. Look, too, at the flow of your mind. Where are your feelings from an hour ago? Where is the flicker of irritation you felt in traffic this morning, or the moment of warmth you felt when the sun was on your face? They arose, they lingered for a time, and they vanished. Our emotional life is like the weather, a constantly shifting pattern of storms and sunshine. Yet, we act as if it were permanent. When a pleasant feeling like joy or excitement arises, we grasp at it. We think, this is it. I want to feel this way forever. This very act of grasping introduces a tension, a fear of the feeling's inevitable departure, which poisons the joy itself. When an unpleasant feeling like sadness, fear, or loneliness arises, we push it away. We think, I can't stand this. I must get rid of it. This act of resistance gives the feeling a powerful, negative energy and prolongs its stay. Our refusal to accept the impermanent, fluid nature of our feelings is what transforms them from simple passing energies into sources of profound suffering. And what of our thoughts? Observe your mind for even a few moments. It is a waterfall of ceaseless activity. Thoughts, memories, plans, and fragments of songs appear from nowhere, command our attention for an instant, and then disappear, only to be replaced by the next one. There is no stopping this flow. We are not the sole author of our thoughts. They are phenomena that arise due to countless causes and conditions, yet we identify with them so strongly, we believe we are our thoughts. We take a passing thought of self-doubt and build an entire identity around it, calling it low self-esteem. We take a passing thought of anger and weave a long story of victimhood around it. We are like a person sitting by a river, grabbing onto every piece of driftwood that floats by and declaring, "This is me." This brings us to the ultimate object of our clinging, the very center of the dream, the idea of I. We have now seen that the body is impermanent. Our feelings are impermanent. Our thoughts are impermanent. So the unavoidable question arises, where is the permanent you that is having these experiences? If the house is constantly being rebuilt, the furniture is always changing, and the inhabitants are always coming and going, where is the fixed owner of the house? The radical insight of Buddhism is that there isn't one. What we call the self, the I, is not a solid entity, but a process. It is a temporary bundling together of these changing elements. The physical body, form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations like thoughts and intentions, and the faculty of consciousness itself. The I is not a noun, it is a verb. It is a continuous act of ing and my ing. We are a process, a flowing pattern, a wave in the ocean of existence. The suffering comes from the wave believing it is separate from the ocean and desperately trying to hold its shape forever. There is a beautiful Zen story that illuminates the wisdom of embracing anika. A Zen master had a favorite teacup. It was exquisitely crafted, and he used it every day for his tea. A student, noticing the master's deep appreciation for the cup, asked him about it. The master smiled and said, "I cherish this cup so deeply because, in my mind, it is already broken." He continued, "I know that its nature is to be fragile. One day, a careless hand, a gust of wind, or just the passage of time will cause it to fall and shatter. I will hear a sound, and it will be gone. Because I live with this understanding, I am able to love it and appreciate its beauty completely. in every single moment, without the fear of losing it. Its eventual breaking is already a part of its existence for me. This is not a morbid or pessimistic outlook. It is a profound realism that leads to a deeper, more authentic form of love and appreciation. By accepting the impermanence of the cup, the Master was free to enjoy it fully. By resisting the impermanence of our lives, our joys, and our relationships, we are never able to enjoy them fully because we are always haunted by the fear of their ending. The path to internalizing this truth is not through philosophical argument, but through direct observation. This is the role of mindfulness practice. The invitation is to become a scientist of your own experience, using your body and mind as a laboratory. The most simple and profound practice is to observe your own breath. Notice the sensation as the air enters your nostrils. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Then there is a pause, and the out-breath begins. It, too, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Each breath is a complete lesson in anicca. It is a miniature lifetime. It arises, it persists, and it passes away, all without any effort from you. By simply resting your attention on this natural rhythm, you are training your mind to see the truth of change in real time. You can extend this to all sensations: the feeling of your feet on the floor, a sound in the distance, a slight ache in your shoulder. Notice how none of it is static. It is all shimmering, vibrating, and changing. We are caught in the river of karma, repeating cycles of suffering, because we are trying to hold on to the waves. We build our identity on a foundation of sand, clinging desperately to a self that is as fleeting as a morning mist. We want our pleasant feelings to be permanent, our bodies to be permanent, our relationships to be permanent, our very lives to be permanent, in a universe whose only constant is change. This struggle, this war against reality, is utterly exhausting. It is the very essence of dukkha. Recognizing the truth of anicca is the beginning of making peace with the world as it is. It allows us to loosen our grip, to let the river flow, knowing that we are a part of that flow, not a rock standing against it. But this raises an even deeper question. If the self we cling to is just an impermanent process, a temporary collection of changing parts, then what is it, really? This deconstruction of the permanent opens the door to an even more profound and liberating truth, the teaching of not self or anatta. It is here that the dream of the separate self truly begins to dissolve. We have journeyed into the heart of the great river of existence and discovered its fundamental nature is change. We have seen that everything we once thought was solid, our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, is in a state of constant, unrelenting flux. This is the truth of anicca, of impermanence. This realization naturally leads us to a question that is both terrifying and liberating. If all the components that make up me are constantly changing, where is the unchanging I at the center of it all? This question brings us face to face with the deepest and most subtle of the core teachings, the truth of anatta, or not self. The word itself can be frightening. No self sounds like annihilation, like a declaration that we do not exist. But this is a misunderstanding. Anatta does not mean you are nothing. It means you are no single thing. It is not a denial of your existence, but a radical redescription of it. It is the key that unlocks the prison of the ego and liberates us from the exhausting burden of self-defense. To understand anatta, we can look to nature for a metaphor. Consider a wave in the ocean. The wave clearly exists. It has a shape, a size, a speed, a direction. We can point to it and say, there is a wave. But what is it made of? It is made of water. It is not separate from the ocean. In fact, the wave is simply the ocean rising up to express itself in a particular form for a short period of time. The moment you try to take the wave out of the ocean to possess it, it ceases to be a wave. Its entire existence is relational, dependent on the water around it, the wind above it, and the seabed below it. So it is with us. We exist, but our existence is not separate, solid, or independent. We are like a wave, a temporary pattern that the universe is expressing. We are composed of sunlight, water, air, and food, of the DNA from our parents and the ideas from our culture. We are utterly dependent on everything else for our existence. The idea of a separate, isolated me is an illusion, a trick of perception. Anatta is the realization that we are not the wave. We are the entire ocean, expressing itself as a wave. The practical power of this insight is best illustrated by a famous Zen story, the story of the empty boat. A man was taking a rest in his small boat, floating on a serene, misty lake. He had his eyes closed, enjoying the peace. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashed into his. His tranquility was shattered. Immediately, the three poisons flared up. Delusion. My peace has been ruined by someone else. Aversion. A surge of hot anger and indignation. He opened his eyes, ready to scream insults at the careless person who had so rudely disturbed him. He was ready to defend his territory, to protect his victimized self. This is the standard human reaction, the automatic response of an ego that feels it has been violated. But as he looked up, with the angry words already forming on his lips, he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply broken free from its moorings and been carried by the current. In that single instant of seeing, his anger completely vanished. It evaporated like the morning mist. Why did his anger disappear? The bump was real, the disturbance was real, but the anger was not caused by the bump itself. It was caused by the story he had constructed about the bumper story that featured a villain, a perpetrator to blame. When he saw the boat was empty, the story collapsed. There was no one to be angry at. The energy of his rage had no object to land on, and so it dissolved. The profound insight of this story is a guide for navigating the entirety of our lives. Most of the boats that bump into us are empty. The colleague who says something sharp in a meeting is not acting out of a desire to hurt you. Their boat is being tossed about by its own currents of stress, insecurity, and fear. The driver who cuts you off in traffic is not personally attacking you. Their boat is empty, piloted only by their own distraction and impatience. The friend who lets you down is often not acting out of malice, but out of their own suffering and confusion. When we take these bumps personally, we are essentially shouting at an empty boat. We are generating immense suffering for ourselves by creating a story that revolves around a victimized me and a blameworthy other. Living with the wisdom of anatta is the practice of learning to see the emptiness of these boats. It doesn't mean we become passive doormats. The boat still bumped us, and we may need to take practical action, like patching a hole in our own boat. But we can do so without the toxic poison of personalized anger and resentment. We are freed from the exhausting cycle of blame and retaliation. When praise and success come our way, we can receive them graciously without becoming inflated with pride. We know that the praise is directed at a temporary collection of conditions, a fortunate wave. We don't have to cling to it as proof of our solid, superior self. When criticism and failure inevitably arrive, they still sting, but they no longer have the power to shatter our core. We understand that the criticism is aimed at an ever-changing process, not a permanent, flawed entity. It's just an empty boat bumping into us. This understanding creates a vital space, a sacred pause between the event and our reaction. In that space lies our freedom. We are no longer slaves to our automatic, defensive reactions. We can choose to respond with clarity, with compassion, even with humor, instead of with the blind fury of a threatened ego. This is the ultimate liberation. Think of the sheer amount of energy we expend every single day protecting and promoting this phantom self. We worry about what people think of me. We defend my opinions. We feel slighted when I am not given enough attention. We burn with jealousy when someone else gets the success I wanted. It is a full-time, high-stress job to be the public relations manager, bodyguard, and chief legal counsel for this entity called me. The teaching of Anatta is not a command to destroy this self. It is the good news that you can finally resign from this impossible job. You can put down this heavy, heavy burden. The self you have been so anxiously guarding doesn't actually need your protection, because it is not the solid, fragile thing you imagined it to be. It is a resilient, flowing process, inseparable from the rest of life. Letting go of the rigid idea of I does not lead to a loss of self. It leads to the discovery of a self that is vaster, more connected, and infinitely more peaceful. So, our investigation has brought us to this critical juncture. We started with the unease of modern life, the symptom we named dukkha. We uncovered its cause in the engine of the three poisons. We examined the universal law of karma through which these poisons operate. We then saw that our suffering is perpetuated by our clinging to things and to a self that are fundamentally impermanent, anicca. And now, by looking deeply, we have seen that this self we cling to is, at its core, empty of a separate, independent existence. It is anatta. We have completed the diagnosis. We have the theoretical understanding, the view from the mountaintop. We can see the landscape of our own minds and understand the dynamics of our suffering. The question that echoes in the silence after these revelations is a practical one. It is the question that every seeker eventually asks. This all makes sense to me. I understand the theory, but how do I actually live it? How do I stop shouting at the empty boats when the bump feels so real? How do I train myself to see the world this way, not just as a concept, but as a lived reality? We are now ready to move from the what to the how. We transition from the wisdom of seeing to the practice of transforming. We must descend from the mountaintop and learn to walk the path in the valley of our everyday lives. And the very first step on this practical path, the foundational tool that makes all other progress possible, is the cultivation of a specific quality of attention. It is the art and science of being present. It is the practice of mindfulness. Having journeyed through the philosophical foundations of our human condition, the nature of our dissatisfaction, the poisons that fuel it, the karmic laws it follows, and the illusory nature of the self that perpetuates it, we arrive at a critical turning point. The question shifts from the theoretical to the intensely practical. It is the gentle, yet urgent, whisper of the heart that asks, how? How do I begin to live differently? How do I apply this profound understanding in the chaotic reality of my daily life? The answer does not begin with a complex ritual or a demanding feat of will. It begins with a simple, radical act. It begins with the decision to arrive in your own life. This act, this art, this gentle science of arriving is called mindfulness. It is the first step on the path of practice, the foundational skill upon which all other wisdom rests. It is the anchor in the storm of our thoughts and the homecoming for our scattered minds. To understand the power of mindfulness, we must first honestly assess the default state of our minds. Left to its own devices, the untrained mind is a restless creature. The ancient sages called it the monkey mind, leaping uncontrollably from branch to branch. A more modern analogy might be a web browser with 100 tabs open at once, all playing different videos and music, constantly demanding our attention. The mind rarely stays where the body is. Instead, it time travels, spending most of its waking hours lost in one of two phantom worlds, the past or the future. The past is a world of ghosts. Our mind wanders back into it constantly, engaging in the fruitless act of rumination. We replay old conversations, thinking of all the clever things we should have said. We sift through the ashes of past failures, feeling the sting of old embarrassments as if they were happening right now. We nurse old grievances, reopening wounds and strengthening the neural pathways of resentment. We might also get lost in nostalgia, clinging to idealized memories of past glories, creating a golden-hued phantom that makes the present moment seem dull and lacking in comparison. Whether the memories are painful or pleasant, the result is the same. We are giving our precious, living energy to a world that no longer exists. We are shadowboxing with ghosts, and in doing so, we become ghosts ourselves, absent from the vibrant, unfolding reality of the present. The other phantom world our mind loves to inhabit is the future. This is the realm of anxiety and expectation. Our minds are constantly projecting forward, rehearsing for events that may never happen. We play out imaginary arguments with our boss, practice for a job interview, or worry about our children's future. We construct elaborate what-if scenarios, almost always of a negative variety, torturing ourselves with potential calamities. We create to-do lists that scroll endlessly in our minds, turning the present moment into a mere stepping stone, something to be rushed through on the way to a future destination where we believe happiness finally resides. When I get this promotion, then I'll be happy. When I finish this project, then I can relax. When I go on vacation, then I will find peace. But the future, by its very definition, never arrives. It is always just over the horizon. By constantly living in this imagined future, we treat the present moment, the only place life is actually happening, as an obstacle to be overcome. We are perpetually waiting for our lives to begin, not realizing that this very moment of waiting is our life. This is our condition. We are exiles from the present moment. Mindfulness is the path of return. It is the gentle but firm act of leading the mind back home. The most widely accepted definition of mindfulness in the modern world comes from the teacher Jon Kabat-Zinn, who describes it as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack the immense wisdom contained in this simple phrase. First, on purpose. Mindfulness is not a passive state. It is not something that just happens to you. It is an intentional act. It is a conscious choice to engage with your life as it is. In a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, towards screens, advertisements, and distractions, the act of deliberately turning your attention inward to the raw data of your own experience is a radical act of self-possession. It is a declaration that you will no longer be a passive passenger in your own life, but an active, engaged participant. This intention doesn't have to be forceful. It can be a very gentle, loving intention, a whisper to yourself that says, "For this one moment, I will be fully here." Second, in the present moment. This is the destination of our return. Why is the present moment so important? Because it is all there is. The past is a collection of electrical traces in your brain. The future is a series of imaginative projections. Neither is real. Life is only ever happening now. This is the only moment you can feel the warmth of the sun, taste your food, hear a loved one's voice, or feel the ground beneath your feet. It is the only moment you can learn, grow, or make a change. It is the only moment you can experience peace. To be mindful is to drop anchor in the river of time, right here, right now, and to fully inhabit the space you are in. It is to wake up to the fact that your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. Third, and perhaps most profoundly, non-judgmentally, this is the quality of heart we bring to our attention. This is what distinguishes mindfulness from mere concentration. Our minds are relentless judgment machines. We label everything: good, bad, right, wrong, pleasant, unpleasant, like, dislike. This constant judging is the act of shooting the second arrow. An unpleasant sensation arises, the first arrow, and the mind immediately judges it. I hate this feeling. It's terrible. It shouldn't be here, the second arrow. Mindfulness invites us to do something completely different. It invites us to suspend judgment and to meet whatever arises with an attitude of gentle curiosity and acceptance. When a difficult feeling like anxiety appears, instead of going to war with it, the mindful response is, "Ah, I see you. This is the feeling of anxiety. I can feel the tightness in my chest, the rapid heartbeat. How interesting." We are not endorsing the feeling or wanting it to stay forever. We are simply acknowledging its presence without adding the second arrow of judgment. This non-judgmental acceptance is a profound act of kindness toward ourselves. It creates a space of inner peace where we can hold even our most difficult experiences with compassion. It is equally important to understand what mindfulness is not. It is not about stopping your thoughts or emptying your mind. This is a common and discouraging misconception. The mind produces thoughts. That is its nature, just as it is the nature of the heart to beat. You cannot stop your thoughts by force, and trying to do so will only lead to frustration. Mindfulness is not about fighting with your thoughts. It is about changing your relationship to them. It is about learning to sit on the bank of the river of your mind and watch the thoughts float by like leaves on the water, without having to jump in and be carried away by every single one. It is not a trance state or an escape from reality. On the contrary, it is a courageous turning toward reality in all its messiness and beauty. So how do we begin this practice? How do we train this muscle of attention? We begin with the most reliable, most accessible tool we possess, the breath. Your breath is your most faithful companion. It is with you from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. It is always available. It costs nothing. And most importantly, it is always happening in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past, and you cannot breathe in the future. Your breath is a physical anchor that can always bring your wandering mind back to the here and now. The practice is deceptively simple. Find a comfortable position, either sitting on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine erect but not stiff, or sitting cross-legged on a cushion. You can gently close your eyes, or leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze. The invitation is simply to bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. You don't need to change your breath, control it, or make it deeper. Just allow it to be exactly as it is. Choose one spot on your body where the sensation of breathing is most clear to you. For some, this might be the cool air entering and the warm air leaving the nostrils. For others, it might be the gentle rise and fall of the chest. For many, it is the soft expansion and contraction of the abdomen. There is no right or wrong place. Just choose one spot and rest your attention there as you would rest your hand on a sleeping cat. Feel the entire journey of one in-breath. Notice its beginning, its middle, its end. Feel the brief pause. Then feel the entire journey of the out-breath. Just this, in and out. Now, inevitably, within a few seconds, something will happen. Your mind will wander. A thought will arise. What am I going to have for dinner? A memory will pop up. A worry about a work project will grab your attention. You will be carried away on a stream of thought and completely forget about the breath. And then, after a few seconds or even a few minutes, you will have a moment of recognition. You will wake up and realize, oh, my mind has wandered away from my breath. This moment is the single most important moment in the entire practice of mindfulness. This is not a moment of failure, it is a moment of success. The practice is not about staying with the breath forever. That is impossible. The practice is the gentle act of realizing you have wandered and kindly, without any judgment, escorting your attention back to the anchor of the breath. Every time you do this, you are strengthening your mindfulness muscle. It is like a bicep curl for your brain. The wandering is not the problem, it is the opportunity. The goal is not to have a mind that never wanders, but to become intimately familiar with its wandering and to cultivate a compassionate, patient attitude toward it, returning again and again and again to the simple, humble reality of this one breath. This formal sitting practice is the gymnasium where we train the muscle, but the true purpose of this training is to bring this quality of attention into our daily lives. This is informal mindfulness. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke often of the practice of washing the dishes. He said that while you are washing the dishes must be the most important thing in your life. You must be completely present with the warmth of the water, the smoothness of the plates, the scent of the soap. If you are standing at the sink, thinking about the cup of tea you will have afterward, you are not really washing the dishes. You are rushing through the present to get to the future. And as he wisely pointed out, if you are incapable of washing the dishes mindfully, you will also be incapable of drinking your tea mindfully. You will be somewhere else, thinking about the next thing, and the next. You will wash your whole life away. We can transform any routine activity into a mindfulness practice. Take the simple act of eating. Most of the time, we eat on autopilot, shoveling food in while watching a screen or lost in thought. A mindful bite is a completely different experience. You can try this with a single strawberry. First, just look at it. Notice its vibrant color, its unique shape, the pattern of its seeds. Then, feel its texture, smell its fragrance. Then, take a small bite. Close your eyes and notice the explosion of flavor and sweetness in your mouth. Notice the texture as you chew slowly. Notice the impulse to swallow. Experience this one bite with your entire being. In that moment, you are fully alive. You can practice mindful walking. Instead of rushing from point A to point B, lost in your plans, bring your attention to the physical sensation of walking. Feel the contact of your feet on the ground, the heel, the sole, the toes. Feel the subtle shift of weight, the movement of your legs, the air on your skin. Walk simply for the sake of walking. You can practice mindful listening. When you are in conversation with someone, give them the gift of your full presence. Listen not just to their words, but to the feeling behind the words. Listen without simultaneously formulating your reply. This is one of the greatest gifts you can give another person. It heals, it connects, and it dissolves misunderstanding. Mindfulness is the cultivation of presence. It is the art of showing up for the moments of your own life. It is not an exotic or mystical state, but our most natural way of being, one that we have simply forgotten. It is the anchor that allows us to find our center in the midst of life's storms. By learning to stabilize the mind, to be present with what is, we create the necessary foundation for the next stage of our inner journey. For once we have developed a capacity for stable, non-judgmental attention, we can then use that focused awareness as a lamp to look even more deeply into the workings of our mind and heart. This is the practice of formal meditation, a journey into the silent landscape of the self, which builds directly upon the ground of mindfulness we have just prepared. The practice of mindfulness, as we have seen, is the gentle art of bringing our attention back to the present moment, again and again, throughout the course of our ordinary day. It is a broad, open awareness, a way of inhabiting our lives more fully, whether we are washing dishes, eating a meal, or walking to our car. It is the foundation. Now, we build upon that foundation. We move from the broad, open field of awareness into the focused, dedicated training ground of the mind. This is the practice of formal meditation. If mindfulness is like becoming aware of the vast, open sky, meditation is the act of choosing to rest your steady and gentle gaze upon a single star, allowing its light to fill your perception. It is a dedicated time we set aside, not to do, but to be. It is an appointment we make with ourselves, a courageous and compassionate act of sitting down, becoming still, and truly listening to the landscape of our own heart and mind. Many of us are intimidated by the idea of meditation. We picture austere monks sitting motionless for hours, and we think, I could never do that. My mind is too busy. We believe the goal is to achieve some mystical state of absolute bliss, or to completely empty the mind of all thoughts. These misconceptions create a barrier before we even begin. So let us be clear. The purpose of meditation is not to fight with your mind, nor is it to achieve a blank slate. The purpose is to understand your mind. Imagine your mind is a jar full of water and fine mud. In our normal, busy lives, the jar is constantly being shaken. The mud is stirred up, and the water is cloudy, murky, and opaque. We cannot see through it. We react to situations from within this state of confusion, making choices and speaking words from a place of agitation. Meditation is the simple act of setting the jar down. We stop shaking it. We sit still, and we allow the muter, frantic thoughts, our restless emotions to gradually, and in its own time, settle to the bottom. The mud doesn't disappear. The thoughts and emotions don't vanish forever, but the water of our consciousness becomes clear. And from this place of clarity, we can see reality, both inner and outer, with much greater wisdom and perspective. From this clarity, immense benefits naturally arise. The practice of sitting still and focusing on the breath has a profound effect on our nervous system. It shifts us out of the chronic fight or flight mode that so many of us live in, and into the rest and digest mode, lowering stress hormones and calming the body's entire physiology. But the benefits run deeper. The repeated act of noticing the mind has wandered and gently bringing it back is a powerful form of attention training. This increased capacity for focus doesn't just stay on the meditation cushion. It spills out into every area of our lives, allowing us to be more present with our work, our families, and our passions. Perhaps the most life-altering benefit of all is the cultivation of what we can call the sacred pause. In our unmeditated state, there is almost no space between a trigger and our reaction. Someone says something critical, stimulus, and we immediately lash out in anger, reaction. Through meditation, we begin to insert a moment of awareness into that gap. The critical word is spoken, but before the anger can hijack our system, a moment of clear seeing arises. In that space, we have freedom, we have choice. We can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion rather than with a blind, conditioned reflex. This space is freedom. It is the freedom to break the cycles of our own karma. So, how do we begin this practice of sitting? The how is far less intimidating than we imagine. It begins with the body. Find a place where you can be undisturbed for 10 or 15 minutes. You can sit on a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your hands resting comfortably on your lap. Or you can sit on a cushion on the floor with your legs crossed in a way that feels stable. The key is to create a posture that embodies a dignified alertness. Let your spine be upright, not stiff like a soldier, but erect and noble, like a stack of golden coins. This helps to keep the mind from becoming dull Allow your shoulders to relax, your heart area to be open, and your chin to be slightly tucked. Your eyes can be gently closed, or if you feel sleepy, you can keep them open with a soft, unfocused gaze directed a few feet in front of you on the floor. Take a moment to feel your body. Feel the weight of it, the points of contact with the chair or cushion. This posture is your physical anchor, a non-verbal message to your mind that you are now entering a time of quiet presence. Now, just as in our mindfulness practice, we turn to the breath. We use the breath as our primary object of concentration, our home base. Gently guide your attention to the physical sensations of breathing. Perhaps you feel it most clearly at the tip of the nostrils, as a coolness on the in-breath and a warmth on the out-breath. Or maybe you feel it as the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your chest or abdomen. Choose one of these spots and let your attention rest there. There is no need to count the breaths or to control them. Your only task is to feel the raw sensation of this one in-breath and this one out-breath. When the mind is calm, this can feel deeply peaceful, but most of the time, especially when we are starting, the mind will not be calm. It will wander. This is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you have a normal human mind. You will be sitting, intending to watch your breath, and within moments, you will find yourself lost in a detailed plan for your weekend, or worrying about a conversation from yesterday. You might be gone for minutes before you even realize it. The moment you realize, oh, I'm no longer with my breath, I'm thinking, that is the golden moment. That is the moment of mindfulness. Your job in that moment is simply to acknowledge where the mind has gone. Thinking, and then, as gently and kindly as you would guide a lost puppy back home, you escort your attention back to the breath. You will have to do this 100 times in a single sitting. This is the practice. The wandering is not the enemy. The frustration with the wandering is the enemy. Every gentle return to the breath is a victory. It is an act of training, of patience, of profound self-compassion. As you sit, you will encounter other difficulties. You might feel physical pain and ache in your back, your knee, your neck. The first response is to mindfully check your posture. Are you slouching? Can you adjust slightly to be more comfortable? If the pain is sharp and signals a real problem, you should mindfully and slowly adjust your position. But if it is simply a dull ache, a discomfort, you can try an advanced practice. Turn your attention toward the sensation itself. Instead of labeling it pain and telling a story about how awful it is, can you investigate the raw sensation? Is it hot? Is it throbbing? Is it sharp? Is it dull? By observing it with this kind of neutral curiosity, you stop feeding it with the second arrow of resistance, and often its power over you lessens. Another common visitor is sleepiness. You might find your head nodding and your mind sinking into a dull fog. Here, you can straighten your spine again, lift your chest, and if needed, gently open your eyes to let in some light. The goal is a relaxed alertness, a vibrant stillness, not a stupor. Through all of this, the wandering thoughts, the physical discomfort, the drowsiness, the guiding principle is kindness. You are building a new relationship with yourself, one that is not based on criticism and judgment, but on acceptance and gentle encouragement. The goal is not a perfect meditation session where your mind never wanders. Such a thing does not exist. The goal is simply to show up, to sit, to be present as best you can, and to be kind to yourself through the whole process. This brings us back to the story of the Zen student who asked his master, "What did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replied, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student then asked, "And what do you do now that you are enlightened?" The master replied, "I chop wood and I carry water." The external activities of life may not change, but meditation utterly transforms our internal relationship to them. Before the practice, We chop wood while worrying about carrying the water. We carry water while regretting how we chopped the wood. Our minds are always somewhere else. The practice of meditation is what allows us to simply chop wood while we are chopping wood. It allows us to be fully present for the singular, miraculous event of our own life, moment by moment. It is the training that allows the mud to settle, the water to clear, and in this newfound clarity, born from the stillness of meditation, we begin to see the patterns of our mind with startling precision. In the quiet space we have created, we can observe our emotions as they arise, before they have a chance to take us over. We can see the first spark of anger, the first wave of sadness, the first flicker of fear. We see them not as me or mine, but as impersonal energies passing through the vast space of our awareness. Seeing them clearly is the first step. The next step in our journey is to learn how to relate to them. What do we do when we see the familiar storm clouds of a difficult emotion gathering on the horizon of our mind? How can we meet these powerful energies with wisdom and compassion, rather than being swept away by them? This is the art of emotional transformation, and it is to this delicate and crucial work that we now turn. In the deep stillness cultivated through meditation, we create a space to listen, and when we listen with unwavering honesty, we hear not only the silence, but also the storms. We become intimately aware of the turbulent weather of our inner world, the sudden flash of anger, the creeping fog of sadness, the chilling wind of fear. For most of our lives, we have been at war with this weather. We either try to suppress it, pushing it down into the basement of our minds with force and shame, pretending it doesn't exist, or we are completely consumed by it, identifying with the storm so totally that we become the hurricane, lashing out and causing damage to ourselves and those around us. Both of these strategy, suppression and unrestrained expression, only lead to more suffering. There is, however, a third way. It is a path of wisdom and profound courage. It is the path of transformation. It does not fight the storm, nor does it surrender to its destruction. Instead, it learns to meet the storm with a gentle, curious, and compassionate presence. It is the art of, as the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh suggests, inviting our anger to sit down for a cup of tea. This path begins with a radical reframing of what our emotions actually are. From a young age, we are taught to categorize them. Joy, love, and excitement are good. Anger, fear, jealousy, and sadness are bad. This simple act of labeling is the first act of war. The moment we label an emotion as bad, we create an internal conflict. We feel shame for feeling it. We tense up against it. We believe there is something fundamentally wrong with us for experiencing this part of the human condition. The wisdom of this practice invites us to drop these labels entirely. Emotions are not good or bad. They are simply energy and information. They are messages from the deepest parts of our being, calling for our attention. Anger, for instance, is often a powerful messenger of injustice. It can be a surge of protective energy that tells us a boundary has been violated, either ours or someone else's. Fear is the primordial intelligence of survival, a signal of perceived danger that is designed to keep us safe. Sadness is the natural, healthy response to loss. It is the energy that allows us to process grief and to value what we have lost. These energies are not the enemy. The true enemy is our own aversion to them, our own judgment, the second arrow we shoot at ourselves the moment they appear. The first step toward transformation, therefore, is to lay down our weapons, to stop the internal war, and to learn to listen to what these powerful messengers have to say. The first practical skill in this process is the simple yet profound act of recognition and naming. Normally, when a strong emotion like anger arises, it takes us over completely. We are hijacked In that moment, we do not feel anger. We are anger. Our entire identity collapses into the white, hot energy of the emotion. Mindfulness practice allows us to insert a crucial sliver of space into this process. The next time you feel the heat of anger beginning to rise, try this experiment. Instead of being swept away, pause. Turn your attention inward. Notice the physical sensations of the anger in your body. Perhaps it is a tightness in your jaw, a clenching in your fists, a burning sensation in your chest, a rush of energy to your head. Just notice these physical manifestations without judgment. Then, in the quiet of your own mind, gently name what you are experiencing. You can simply say, "Ah, anger is here," or "I recognize this feeling. This is anger." This simple act of naming is transformative. It creates a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. You are no longer the anger itself. You are the awareness that is able to see and recognize the presence of anger. You have moved from being the storm to being the sky that holds the storm. In that space between the awareness and the emotion, you find your power and your freedom. You are no longer its slave. Once you have recognized and acknowledged the emotion, the next step is the most radical act of self-compassion. Our instinct, even after recognizing the anger, is to want to get rid of it. But the mindful path asks us to do the opposite. It asks us to turn toward the emotion and embrace it. Thich Nhat Hanh offers the beautiful and powerful metaphor of a mother holding her crying baby. A loving mother does not get angry at her baby for crying. She doesn't try to suppress the crying by shouting at the infant, nor does she ignore it. She hears the cry, and she immediately goes to the baby, picks it up, and holds it tenderly in her arms. She cradles it. Her act of holding the baby with love and care is the first and most important action. It soothes the baby, letting it know it is safe and not alone. In this same way, our mindfulness is the mother, and our difficult emotion, anger, our fear, our sorrow is the crying child within us. The practice is to use our mindful breathing to gently embrace the feeling. We can say to ourselves, breathing in, "I know that anger is here." Breathing out, "I am taking good care of my anger." We are not analyzing it, not judging it, not trying to figure out its cause just yet. We are simply holding it with a tender, non-judgmental presence. We are giving our inner child the attention and care it is crying out for. This compassionate embrace is a powerful healing energy. Often, this is all the emotion needs. It needs to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be held without judgment. When we provide this safe space, the emotion can express its energy and naturally begin to calm down, just like a baby soothed in its mother's arms. As we hold the emotion in this gentle embrace, we must also remember the truth of anicca, of impermanence. We see that the raw energy of the emotion itself is not solid or permanent. It is a wave that rises, peaks, and, if we don't continue to feed it, eventually recedes. What keeps an emotion like anger alive for hours or even days? It is the fuel of our stories. After the initial flash of anger, we pour gasoline on the fire with our thoughts. "He always disrespects me. I can't believe she said that. This is so unfair. I will never forget this." These stories, these second, third, and fourth arrows, are what transform a fleeting emotional energy into a prolonged state of suffering. The practice of mindfully embracing the emotion without feeding it the story allows the emotion to follow its natural, impermanent course. We allow the wave to rise and pass through us without building a dam of resistance or a whirlpool of rumination. We learn to trust the process, knowing that this too shall pass. There is a Zen story about a master who saw a scorpion drowning in a river. He reached down to save it, and the scorpion stung him. He pulled his hand back in pain, but then reached down again to save the creature. Again, it stung him, A disciple watching this unfold asked him, "Master, why do you keep trying to save that ungrateful creature when it only stings you?" The master looked at his swollen hand and then at the disciple and said, "It is the nature of the scorpion to sting. It is my nature to save. My nature does not change because of its nature." This story speaks to the ultimate fruit of this practice. When we learn to work with our own inner scorpion sore, anger, our fear, our jealousy with a steady, compassionate presence, we are cultivating our own higher nature. We are developing a core of wisdom and compassion that is not dependent on external conditions. Our peace is no longer contingent on life being pleasant, and our compassion is no longer contingent on others being kind. We learn to act from our own deepest intention of love and clarity, regardless of the stings we may receive, both from within and without. This profound inner work, this practice of transforming our own suffering into compassion, is the furnace where true spiritual strength is forged. And when we have learned to offer this kindness to the most difficult parts of ourselves, we naturally find that we are able to extend it to others. The compassion we cultivate for our own inner child becomes the compassion we can offer to the entire world. It is to this outward radiation of the heart that our journey now turns. Having learned to sit with and tenderly embrace our own difficult emotions, we discover within ourselves a reservoir of strength and gentle understanding. The inner war begins to subside, and a quiet peace takes its place. This inner peace is not an end in itself. It is the fertile ground from which the heart's most beautiful qualities can grow. The journey inward naturally turns outward. The compassion we have learned to offer ourselves now seeks to radiate out into the world. This is the practice of opening the heart, of cultivating the boundless states of love and compassion that are the ultimate antidote to the poisons of hatred, jealousy, and fear. In the Buddhist tradition, these are known as the two wings of a bird that allow the spirit to soar: metta, which is loving, kindness, and karuna, which is compassion. Metta, or loving kindness, is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and to have the causes of happiness. It is not romantic love, nor is it a conditional affection given only to those we like. It is a boundless, unconditional well-wishing. It is like the warmth of the sun, which shines on everyone and everything, without discrimination on the beautiful flower as well as the discarded stone, on the saint as well as the sinner. It is a quiet, steady radiation of goodwill, a fundamental friendliness toward all of existence. Karuna, or compassion, is its inseparable partner. If loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. It is the heart's trembling in the face of pain. It is what we feel when we see another being, human or animal, in distress. It is important to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity comes from a place of superiority. We look down on someone and think, "Oh, that poor person. I am so glad I am not them." Pity creates distance. True compassion, karuna, arises from a place of equality, from the recognition of our shared humanity. It sees the suffering of another and thinks, "I know what suffering feels like. This is a shared experience." In this, we are connected. Compassion closes the distance. It is born from a deep empathy that understands. Given a different set of causes and conditions, I could easily be in your place. These two qualities, metta and karuna, are not just passive feelings to hope for. They are trainable skills of the heart. They are mental muscles that we can deliberately and systematically strengthen. The primary method for this training is the practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation. It is a systematic process of opening the heart in expanding circle. We begin in a comfortable meditation posture, taking a few moments to settle the mind by focusing on the breath. Then, we begin the first, and for many, the most difficult stage, offering loving kindness to ourselves. In our culture, this can feel awkward, selfish, or even arrogant. But we must understand that we cannot offer to others what we do not possess ourselves. You cannot draw water from an empty well. To wish for our own well-being is to fill that well, creating the foundation for genuine generosity of spirit. So, we gently and silently repeat phrases directed inward, allowing the feeling behind the words to permeate our being. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. As you repeat these phrases, you may feel resistance, doubt, or a sense of unworthiness. That is perfectly normal. The practice is not to force a feeling, but to gently plant the seeds. You are simply offering yourself the same kindness you would offer a dear friend. Repeat the phrases softly, allowing them to be a gentle balm for your own heart. Once you have spent some time with yourself, you expand the circle. The second stage is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved one, a close friend, a family member, a mentor, someone for whom it is very easy to feel love and appreciation. Picture this person clearly in your mind's eye. See them smiling, feel their presence, and then direct the phrases of metta toward them. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. Let your heart radiate this genuine wish for their well-being. Feel the natural warmth that arises. This stage helps to amplify the feeling of loving kindness, making it strong and stable. The third stage challenges our indifference. Here, we bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a clerk at a grocery store, a person you see on your daily commute, a neighbor you don't know well. This is someone for whom you feel neither strong liking nor disliking. By directing the phrases of metta toward them, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease, we begin to break down the artificial walls of separation we build around ourselves. We recognize their humanity, their desire for happiness and freedom from suffering, which is identical to our own. This practice counters our tendency to see others as mere background characters in the movie of our life, and instead acknowledges them as the center of their own universe, just as we are. The fourth stage is the most transformative and challenging. It is here that we work with a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly difficult, not the person who has caused you the most pain in your life. Bring this person to mind. The practice here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself to like them. The practice is an act of profound wisdom. It is the attempt to see the suffering behind their harmful actions. We remember the three poisons. We understand that people cause harm because they themselves are trapped in greed, hatred, and delusion. Their actions are a cry of their own suffering. From this place of understanding, we try to form the wish for them to be free from the very suffering that causes them to act in harmful ways. So we wish, may you be safe. May you be free from your anger. May you be free from your delusion. May you be happy. This is an act of immense power. It does not absolve them of their actions, but it frees us from the prison of our own resentment. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. This practice is the antidote. It dissolves the bitterness in our own heart. Finally, in the fifth stage, we let the circle become boundless. We radiate loving kindness in all directions, to all beings without exception. We think of our friends, our neutral people, our difficult people, and we hold them all in the same compassionate embrace. We extend our wishes to people in our city, our country, and all over the world. We extend them to animals, to creatures in the sea and in the sky. May all beings everywhere, without exception, be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this stage, the heart transcends all boundaries, and we touch a sense of universal, unconditional love. This cultivated compassion is not a weak or passive state. It is a source of immense strength and courage. There is a misconception that a compassionate person is a pushover, unable to make difficult decisions. But true karuna is a combination of a soft heart and a strong back. It is the motivation for what is sometimes called fierce compassion. Imagine a doctor who must perform a painful surgery to remove a cancerous tumor. The act of cutting into a patient's body is externally violent, but it is motivated by a deep compassion, a desire to remove the cause of suffering and restore health. In the same way, wise compassion might lead us to set a very firm boundary with someone, to say no to a harmful request, or to speak out strongly against injustice. The action may be firm, but the motivation is not hatred or revenge. It is a powerful wish to prevent further harm for everyone involved. The Buddha's own life provides the perfect example. His cousin, Devadatta, was consumed by jealousy and ambition, and on multiple occasions he tried to murder the Buddha. He rolled a boulder down a hill to crush him. He sent a drunken, enraged elephant to trample him. In each case, the Buddha's response was not one of fear or hatred. He saw Devadatta not as an evil monster, but as a deeply sick man, utterly consumed by the poisons of his own mind. He saw Devadatta's suffering with perfect clarity. The Buddha's actions were firm and wise. He protected himself and his community from the plots, but his heart remained completely open, always radiating compassion, always holding the wish that his cousin might one day be free from the very inner torment that drove him to such desperate acts. This is the power of a trained heart. It is a heart that has learned to see the world through the eyes of love. The practices of metta and karuna dissolve the rigidity of the self-centered view. They are the ultimate expression of the wisdom of anatta, or not self. For in the moment of true compassion, the boundary between self and other becomes porous and transparent. We realize that our happiness is inextricably linked to the happiness of others, and their suffering is, in a very real way, our suffering. This profound sense of interconnection is the source of our greatest joy and our deepest peace. But this open, connected heart must still navigate a world of uncertainty. We can act with the purest love and compassion, yet not achieve the outcome we desire. We can offer our help, and it may be rejected. We can love someone with all our being, and they may not love us back. To maintain our inner peace in the face of these realities requires one more essential skill. We must learn to marry our wholehearted engagement with a radical acceptance of what is. This is the profound and liberating art of letting go. Having opened our hearts to the world through the practice of compassion, we encounter one of life's most profound and often painful paradoxes. We can act with the purest love, and our efforts may come to nothing. We can offer our help with a full heart, and it may be rejected. We can strive with all our might for a worthy goal, and we may fail. If our inner peace is dependent on achieving the outcomes we desire, it will forever be a fragile and fleeting thing, constantly at the mercy of a world we do not control. This is where we must learn the most subtle and liberating of all spiritual arts, the art of letting go. It is the practice of learning to act with a whole heart, while holding the results with an open hand. In our culture, the idea of letting go is often mistaken for weakness, for apathy, for giving up. But in the light of this wisdom, it is the very opposite. It is an act of supreme strength and profound intelligence. To understand this, we must first feel the difference in our own bodies. Imagine clenching your fist as tightly as you can. Feel the tension in your fingers, your wrist, your forearm. It is an act of resistance, of struggle. It is exhausting to maintain, and a clenched fist cannot receive anything. This is the energy of attachment, of clinging to a specific outcome. Now, slowly, deliberately, open your hand. Feel the release of tension, the sense of ease, the readiness to receive. This is the energy of letting go. The open hand is just as strong as the clenched fist, if not stronger, for its strength is flexible and relaxed, not rigid and brittle. This is the vital distinction between giving up and letting go. Giving up is born from the poison of aversion. It is the frustrated energy of defeat. It says, "This is too difficult. I can't achieve what I want, so I quit." It is a turning away from life, a contraction of the spirit. Letting go, on the other hand, is born from wisdom and acceptance. It arises from a clear seeing of the truth of anicca, of impermanence. It understands that we can control our intention and our effort, but we cannot control the final outcome, which depends on a million other causes and conditions beyond our command. Letting go is not about ceasing to act. It is about ceasing to be attached to the fruits of our action. It is the freedom to pour our entire being into our work, our relationships, and our passions, with the quiet inner peace that comes from accepting that the results are not, and have never been, entirely up to us. So, what is it that we must learn to let go of? We are carrying so many heavy burdens, often without even realizing it. The first is the burden of the past. Our minds are like museums of old hurts, regrets, and failures. We wander through the halls of our memory, rereading the plaques of our grievances, polishing the statues of our old mistakes. We carry the weight of conversations that ended years ago, of choices whose consequences are long since past. To let go of the past does not mean to forget it or to deny its lessons. It means to release its emotional grip on the present moment. It is the wisdom to understand that you cannot drive a car forward while looking only in the rearview mirror. You acknowledge the past, you learn from it, and then you gently return your attention to the only place where life can be lived, right here, right now. The second burden is our attempt to control the future. We suffer immensely, not from the future itself, which does not exist, but from our frantic and futile efforts to nail it down, to force it into the narrow container of our desires. We create rigid blueprints for our lives, our careers, our relationships, and then we are filled with rage and disappointment when the unpredictable river of life refuses to follow our map. Letting go of the future means holding our plans lightly. It means setting a wise and compassionate direction, like a sailor setting a course, but being willing and able to adjust the sails to work with the winds and currents as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. It is a dance with uncertainty, rather than a war against it. A third, and very heavy, burden is the desperate need to be right. Our ego, that fragile sense of a separate self, is terrified of being wrong. It will go to extraordinary lengths arguing, manipulating, shutting down to defend its position. This need creates so much conflict, so much stress, so much separation between ourselves and the people we love. To let go of the need to be right is an act of profound wisdom. It is to prioritize peace over victory. It is to value connection more than correction. It doesn't mean you abandon your values or your understanding, but it means you are no longer a slave to the ego's petty demand to win every battle. It is the freedom to listen, to learn, and to value harmony above all else. Perhaps the most famous story illustrating this art comes from the Zen tradition. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a raging river where a beautiful young woman stood, afraid to cross. Monastic vows strictly forbade the monks from touching a woman. The young, zealous monk stood back, ready to lecture her on detachment. The old monk, however, simply walked up to the woman, wordlessly lifted her onto his shoulders, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued his journey. The young monk was aghast. He followed his master for miles, fuming in silence, his mind replaying the scene over and over. He was filled with judgment and indignation. Finally, he could bear it no longer and burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman. You have broken a sacred precept." The old monk turned to him, his face calm and peaceful, and said, "Brother, I set that woman down by the riverbank miles ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story perfectly captures our human predicament. We are all carrying things long after they have passed. We carry the memory of the insult, the weight of the grudge, the burden of our righteous anger. The event is over, but we keep it alive in our minds, allowing it to poison our present moment. Letting go is the simple, yet profound, act of setting the woman down. It is the recognition that the event is over, and the only thing keeping the suffering alive is our own mental clinging. We cultivate this essential skill not in the great dramas of our lives, but in the small, everyday frustrations. When you are stuck in a traffic jam, late for an appointment, you feel the tension rise. This is a chance to practice. Can you let go of your timeline? Can you accept this moment exactly as it is, without the second arrow of mental resistance? When a plan you were looking forward to gets cancelled, can you feel the disappointment without letting it ruin your day? Can you let go of your expectation and open to the new possibilities of the unplanned time? Each time you consciously release your grip on a small preference, you are building the muscle of letting go. You are training your mind to be more flexible, more resilient, and more at peace. The art of letting go is the secret to a life of engaged serenity. It allows us to love more deeply because we are not constantly afraid of loss. It allows us to work more passionately because our self-worth is not tied to the outcome. It is the key to acting in the world with both a courageous heart and a peaceful mind. This profound ability to engage fully in the activities of our life, freed from the frantic clinging to results, is the very essence of an awakened life lived in the midst of the world. And there is no area where this practice is more needed or more tested than in the sphere that consumes the majority of our time and energy, our work and our livelihood. It is to this practical application of wisdom that we now must turn, having learned to open our hearts with compassion and to act with the wisdom of letting go. We arrive at the great challenge and opportunity of the spiritual path: integration. It is easy to feel peaceful on a meditation cushion in a quiet room, or to feel compassionate while reflecting on abstract beings. But how do we carry this peace, this wisdom, this compassion into the most demanding and often stressful arena of our lives? I am speaking of our work. For most of us, our livelihood consumes the majority of our waking hours. It is the place where our patience is most tested, our egos are most threatened, and our values are most compromised. We often create a painful split, a deep chasm between our work self and our real self. We put on a mask, we play a role, and we count the hours until we can escape back to our real life. This very split is a profound source of dukkha, a quiet suffering that drains our vitality and leaves us feeling fragmented and inauthentic. The Buddhist path offers a powerful medicine to heal this split. It is called Samma Ajiva, or right livelihood. It is one of the essential branches of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it teaches us that our work need not be a source of stress and alienation. Instead, it can become our greatest practice ground, a place to cultivate mindfulness, to express compassion, and to find deep meaning. It is the art of sowing wholesome seeds in the very soil of our daily labor. Traditionally, right livelihood is understood in an external sense as choosing a profession that does not cause harm to oneself or others. The classical texts advise avoiding livelihoods based on dealing in weapons, in living beings for the purpose of slaughter, in meat production, in intoxicants, and in poisons. In our complex modern world, We can extend this principle to include any work that knowingly profits from the exploitation of others, that promotes addiction and distraction, that deliberately misleads the public, or that consciously contributes to the destruction of our natural environment. This external dimension is important. It invites us to reflect deeply on the impact our work has on the web of life. It asks us to align our career choices, as much as we are able, with our deepest ethical values. However, for most of us, a sudden career change is not practical or possible, and it is here that we discover the deeper, more transformative, and universally accessible dimension of right livelihood, the inner dimension. This dimension is not about what you do, but how you do it. It is about the intention and the quality of attention you bring to your work, moment by moment. From this perspective, you can practice right livelihood as a software engineer, a barista, a teacher, an accountant, a bus driver, or a caregiver. You can be a CEO in a high-pressure boardroom, or a janitor cleaning an empty office late at night. The place of work becomes your monastery. The daily challenges become your spiritual curriculum. The practice is to transform your work from a mere transaction for survival into a genuine expression of your awakened heart. Let us explore what this modern monastery looks like. Your desk, your workstation, your driver's seat, your kitchen counter this becomes your meditation cushion. The central practice here is the cultivation of focused, single-pointed attention. Our modern work culture glorifies multitasking, but our nervous systems pay a heavy price. We jump from email to spreadsheet to instant message, our attention shattered into 1,000 pieces, leaving us feeling frazzled, inefficient, and perpetually behind. To practice right livelihood is to bring the quiet dignity of mindfulness to each task. When you are writing an email, just write the email. Bring your full attention to the words, the tone, the intention. When you are finished, mindfully close it and move to the next task. When you are listening to a customer, just listen. Give them the gift of your undivided presence. This is the practice of concentration meditation applied to the flow of your workday. It is an act of rebellion against the culture of distraction. It not only leads to better, more effective work, but it transforms the nature of the work itself from a source of stress into a continuous stream of mindfulness training. The people you work with, your colleagues, your clients, your boss become your sangha, your spiritual community. This is where we practice compassion. In any workplace, there is bound to be a difficult person, someone whose behavior consistently triggers our anger or frustration. This person is our greatest teacher. Here, we practice the lesson of the empty boat. We train ourselves to see beyond their abrasive actions to the suffering that is driving them. Their arrogance may be a mask for deep insecurity. Their critical nature may be a reflection of their own harsh inner critic. Their gossip may stem from their own loneliness. Seeing this does not mean we condone or permit harmful behavior, but it allows us to respond with wisdom rather than blind reaction. We can set firm, clear boundaries, but we do so from a place of compassion rather than hatred. This practice transforms our most challenging relationships from sources of dread into opportunities for profound spiritual growth. We can also practice mudita, or sympathetic joy, celebrating the successes of our colleagues as if they were our own. This is the direct antidote to the poison of workplace envy and competition, fostering a culture of mutual support and shared humanity. The demanding aspects of your job, the tight deadline, the stressful presentation, the complex problem that seems impossible to solve, these become your koan. A koan in Zen is a riddle or a paradoxical question given to a student to exhaust the logical mind and force a breakthrough into a more intuitive level of understanding. A stressful work project is a koan that life gives you. It asks you, How can you engage with this challenge with full effort and energy, while also practicing the art of letting go of the outcome? How can you remain peaceful and centered even when the pressure is immense? This is where all the practices converge. We use mindfulness to stay focused on the task at hand. We use compassion in our interactions with the team. We use the wisdom of impermanence to remind ourselves that this stress, too, shall pass. And we use the art of letting go to release our attachment to a perfect, untroubled process. The stress is no longer just stress. It is a rich and fertile ground for practice. There is a beautiful story of a man who encounters a street sweeper who is humming joyfully as he works. The man is perplexed and asks, "How can you be so happy in such a dirty, thankless job?" The street sweeper stops, leans on his broom, and smiles. He says, "You see me sweeping the streets, but for me, this is a sacred practice. With every stroke of my broom, I calm my own mind. I clear a safe path for the people who will walk here. I bring a little bit of order and beauty to this small corner of the world. I feel the movement of my body and the rhythm of my breath. For me, this is not a menial job. This is my meditation. I have found my peace right here." This street sweeper is a master of right livelihood. He has transformed the mundane into the sacred. He has found a profound sense of purpose and peace, not by changing his job, but by changing his relationship to it. He understands that meaning is not something you find in a job title. It is something you bring to the work you do. This leads us to the final, crucial element of practicing right livelihood, the untangling of our self-worth from our work. So many of us have fused our identity with our professional life. We believe I am a doctor, I am a manager, I am a successful entrepreneur, or conversely, I am unemployed, I am a failure, I am stuck in a dead-end job. We ride the emotional roller coaster of our career, soaring with pride when we get a promotion or a compliment, and crashing into despair when we face a setback or criticism. This identification is a primary source of modern suffering. It is a direct violation of the wisdom of anatta, of not self. You are not your job title. You are not your salary. You are not your successes or your failures. You are the vast, open awareness that is experiencing the temporary role of being a worker. Your intrinsic value as a human being is unconditional and has absolutely nothing to do with your professional status. The practice is to constantly, gently remind yourself of this truth. When you succeed, enjoy it without letting it inflate your ego. When you fail, allow yourself to feel the disappointment without letting it define your worth. This disidentification is profoundly liberating. It takes the life or death pressure off our performance and allows us to work with a newfound sense of freedom, playfulness, and ease. Right livelihood is therefore the great integrator. It is the path that closes the gap between our Sunday morning meditation and our Monday morning meeting. It invites us to see that our life is one seamless whole. There is no spiritual life and ordinary life. There is only life, and every moment of it is an opportunity to wake up. By bringing mindful attention, compassionate intention, and a non-attached wisdom to the work we do each day, we transform the very place that once caused us so much stress into a powerful vehicle for our own liberation. We sow seeds of peace, clarity, and kindness, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of everyone our work touches. Our actions become aligned with our heart, and just as our actions have the power to create our world, so too do our words. The way we communicate in the workplace and in all of life is another profound karmic force. It is to the cultivation of this force, the practice of right speech, that we must now turn. Having brought the light of mindfulness into our actions through the practice of right livelihood, we now turn that light upon an even more subtle and powerful force in our lives, our speech. Words are the currency of our relationships, the tools with which we build connection or create division. A single word can plant a seed of joy that blossoms for years, just as a single careless phrase can leave a scar that never fully fades. We wield this immense power every day, often with very little awareness. We speak out of habit, out of reactivity, out of a desire to fill the silence. The practice of sama vacha, or right speech, is the conscious and compassionate art of using this power for the benefit of ourselves and others. It is not a practice of censorship or of speaking in a stilted, artificial way. It is the practice of understanding the karmic weight of our words and of cultivating a way of communicating that is rooted in truth, kindness, and wisdom. The traditional teachings on right speech offer a clear and comprehensive framework, guiding us to abstain from 4 specific types of harmful speech. The first is abstaining from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling deliberate lies. It is a commitment to living with integrity, to being a person whose word can be trusted. But it goes deeper than that. It also means avoiding exaggeration for the sake of a better story, or omission for the sake of convenience. It is about speaking from a place of authenticity, representing ourselves and our experiences honestly. When we commit to speaking the truth, we build a foundation of trust not only with others, but, just as importantly, with ourselves. We create a life free from the exhausting mental effort required to maintain a web of deceptions, large or small. The second principle is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the practice of refusing to use our words as weapons to set one person against another. It is the conscious choice not to engage in gossip, not to speak ill of someone behind their back, not to carry tales from one person to another in a way that fuels conflict. Our world is already filled with so much division. Divisive speech is like pouring fuel on that fire. The practice of right speech, instead, uses words to build bridges. It looks for opportunities to speak of the good qualities in others. It seeks to reconcile those who are at odds. It understands that to diminish another person with our words is ultimately to diminish ourselves. It is the commitment to be an agent of harmony, not of discord. The third principle is to abstain from harsh speech. This, of course, includes the obvious forms of verbal violence, shouting, insulting, cursing, and name-calling. These are like throwing stones. But right speech also asks us to become sensitive to the more subtle forms of harshness that we often use without thinking. This includes biting sarcasm, condescending tones, belittling jokes made at another's expense, and passive-aggressive comments. These are like sharp little needles, and they can be just as wounding as a stone. The practice here is to cultivate a quality of gentleness in our communication. It is to choose words that are, as the Buddha described them, pleasing to the ear, soothing to the heart. This doesn't mean we can never speak of difficult things, but it means we do so with a quality of care and respect, with an intention to heal rather than to wound. The fourth and final principle is to abstain from idle chatter. This is perhaps the most challenging for us in our noisy, hyper-connected world. Idle chatter is speech that has no real purpose. It is the endless stream of commentary, opinion, and trivial information that we use to fill empty space. It is speaking simply for the sake of hearing our own voice. This kind of speech agitates the mind and adds to the background static of the world. The practice here is not to become grimly silent or to refuse to engage in light-hearted conversation. It is to cultivate an awareness of our intention. Are we speaking to connect, to share something of value, to bring joy, or are we just making noise? This principle invites us to value silence, not as an empty void to be feared, but as a precious space of rest and clarity. These 4 principles provide a wonderful map. To help us navigate in the moment, we can use a simple, practical filter known as the 4 gates of speech. Before you speak, you can quickly pass your intended words through these 4 gates. The first gate asks, is it true? If what you are about to say is not true, the gate is closed. There is no need to proceed further. The second gate asks, is it kind? A statement might be true, but if it is not kind, we must pause. Is there a kinder way to phrase it? Is it possible that even though it is true, its utterance would cause unnecessary pain? If so, the gate may remain closed. The third gate asks, is it necessary? Is it useful? A statement may be both true and kind, but if it is not necessary, it may simply be idle chatter. Will saying this actually benefit anyone? Does this need to be said right now? If not, we can choose the wisdom of silence. The fourth and final gate asks, is it the right time? Even a statement that is true, kind, and necessary can cause harm if it is spoken at the wrong time or in the wrong context. A difficult truth delivered in a moment of extreme emotional distress might not be received well. This gate calls for us to be sensitive to the situation and the receptivity of the listener. If our words pass through all 4 of these gates, we can speak with confidence, knowing that we are speaking with skill and compassion. This leads us to understand that right speech is as much about listening as it is about talking. The counterpart to skillful speech is the practice of deep listening. Most of the time, we do not truly listen. We listen with the intent to reply. While the other person is speaking, we are busy formulating our rebuttal, our counter-argument, our own story. We are waiting for them to take a breath so we can jump in. Deep listening is a completely different act. It is listening with only one purpose, to understand. It is to offer the other person the rare and precious gift of our full, undivided, non-judgmental attention. It is to listen not just to the words being said, but to the feelings, the needs, and the suffering that may lie beneath the words. When we listen in this way, we create a space of safety and trust where true communication can happen. It is a profoundly healing act, both for the speaker and for the listener. There is a powerful story that illustrates the unshakable peace that comes from mastering right speech and its relationship to our own minds. A man, hearing of the Buddha's teachings, became enraged, believing them to be a threat to his own traditions. He traveled to find the Buddha and, upon finding him, began to shout a long and vicious stream of insults and abuse. The Buddha did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. He simply sat in what is called noble silence, listening with a calm and open presence. When the man finally ran out of energy and fell silent, the Buddha looked at him kindly and asked, "My friend, if you prepare a beautiful gift and you offer it to someone, but that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The angry man, taken aback, replied, "Well, it would still belong to me." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so. You have offered me a gift of your anger and your abuse. I do not accept it." In that moment, the man understood. The words of abuse only had power if the Buddha agreed to receive them. By remaining in a state of unshakable peace, the Buddha showed that the poison of the man's words remained the man's own property. This is the ultimate fruit of the practice. We realize that the words of others can only harm us to the extent that we allow them to. We stop accepting the gifts of anger and criticism, and we, in turn, become much more careful about the gifts we are offering to the world through our own speech. We learn to use our words as instruments of healing, of connection, and of truth. We learn that sometimes the most compassionate and wise communication is a comfortable, shared silence. But where does speech, this potent karmic force, originate? Our words, just like our physical actions, do not arise from a vacuum. They are the blossoms of the seeds we plant in the garden of our mind. They spring directly from our thoughts, our attitudes, and our intentions. To truly master our speech and our actions, we must therefore go to the very root. We must learn to tend this inner garden. It is to this essential work, the cultivation of right intention and right thought, that our path now leads us. We have walked the paths of our outer world, learning to bring mindfulness to our actions through right livelihood and to our communication through right speech. We have committed to causing no harm through our work and to cultivating harmony through our words. But these outer practices, as noble as they are merely the branches of a tree. To truly transform our lives, we must go deeper, to the very root system from which all our actions and words emerge. We must enter the silent, fertile, and often chaotic territory of our own mind. This is the practice of sama, sankappa, right intention, or right thought. It is the art of becoming a conscious gardener of our inner world, learning to distinguish between the seeds of wholesome states and the weeds of unwholesome ones, and deliberately cultivating a mind that leads to peace, wisdom, and liberation. Imagine your mind is a vast and fertile garden. Every single thought that passes through it is a seed. Thoughts of anger, jealousy, and greed are seeds for thorny, poisonous weeds. They grow quickly, choke out the light, and create a landscape of suffering. Thoughts of kindness, generosity, and clarity are seeds for beautiful, life-giving flowers and nourishing fruit. They grow more slowly, requiring patience and care, but they create a landscape of beauty, peace, and well-being. For most of our lives, we are unconscious gardeners. We allow any and all seeds, blown in by the winds of media, culture, and our own conditioning, to land and take root in our minds. We then find ourselves living in a garden overrun with weeds, and we wonder why we are not happy. Right intention is the act of waking up and taking responsibility for this inner landscape. It is the understanding that the outer world we experience is a direct reflection of the inner world we cultivate. As the opening verse of the Dhammapada, one of the most ancient Buddhist texts, states, "Mind precedes all phenomena. Mind is their chief. They are all mind wrought. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox." The path of right intention is not about controlling every thought and impossible task, but about setting a conscious direction for the mind. The Buddha, with his profound psychological insight, simplified this practice by asking us to cultivate 3 specific types of wholesome intention and to simultaneously let go of their toxic opposites. The first of these is the intention of renunciation, or nekkhamma. This is the direct antidote to the poison of craving and clinging. When we hear the word renunciation, we might picture a grim-faced ascetic denying all of life's pleasures, but this is a misunderstanding. The spirit of nekkhamma is not one of grim denial, but of joyful release. It is the liberating wisdom of letting go. It is the realization that our constant craving for more possessions, more status, more praise, more pleasant sensations is the very source of our restlessness. Craving is a fire that is never quenched. The more you feed it, the hotter it burns. It is a hunger that is never satisfied. The intention of renunciation is the choice to stop feeding this fire. It is the wisdom of recognizing that true happiness is not found in getting more, but in needing less. It is the profound peace of contentment. In practice, this means consciously turning the mind away from thoughts of grasping and towards thoughts of simplicity and appreciation for what we already have. When the mind starts fantasizing about the next purchase or the next promotion, we can gently recognize this pattern of craving and introduce the thought, May I be content with what is here and now. May I find peace in simplicity. It is the feeling of putting down a heavy bag you didn't even realize you were carrying. The second wholesome path is the intention of loving kindness, or avyapada. This is the direct antidote to the poison of ill will, hatred, and aversion. Ill will is a vast spectrum of mental states. It ranges from overt, violent hatred to the more subtle forms of resentment, bitterness, judgment, stubbornness, and the us versus them mentality that is so prevalent in our world. Any thought that wishes harm, discomfort, or failure upon another being is a thought of ill will, and like a burning coal held in the hand, it always burns the one holding it first. The intention of loving kindness is the conscious choice to cultivate its opposite, a warm, open-hearted wish for the well-being of all. It is the deliberate practice of replacing thoughts of judgment with thoughts of understanding, thoughts of resentment with thoughts of forgiveness, and thoughts of anger with thoughts of care. When we find ourselves mentally rehearsing an argument or stewing over a past hurt, we can recognize this as the poison of ill will at work. The practice is to consciously introduce a different intention. We can bring to mind the person we are angry with and silently wish, "May you be well. May you be free from the suffering that is causing you to act this way." This practice, as we explored with metta-meditation, is not for their benefit, but for ours. It is the act of cleansing the poison from our own heart, creating a spacious and peaceful inner environment. The third wholesome path is the intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa. This is the direct antidote to the poison of cruelty and aggression. It is the intention of compassion in its purest form. Cruelty is not just the desire to inflict physical violence. It is also the subtle indifference to the suffering of others. It is the coldness of heart that allows us to walk past someone in need without a second thought. It is the act of treating other living beings, humans, animals, and the earth itself as mere objects to be used for our own gratification. The intention of harmlessness is the active cultivation of a sensitive and responsive heart. It is the commitment to move through the world in a way that, to the best of our ability, protects life and alleviates suffering. It begins in the mind. It is the choice to turn away from thoughts that dehumanize others, that take pleasure in another's misfortune, or that justify violence. Instead, we cultivate thoughts of empathy and active compassion. When we hear of suffering, instead of turning away, we can allow our hearts to be touched and silently form the intention, "May they be free from their suffering. May I act in a way that contributes to their well-being." This intention softens the mind and makes our actions in the world naturally more compassionate and wise. Understanding these three paths is the first step. The next is learning how to actively tend the garden of the mind. One of the greatest obstacles we face is a pattern the Buddha called papancha, which can be translated as mental proliferation or conceptual elaboration. This is the mind's near instantaneous tendency to take a simple, neutral event and weave it into a complex, dramatic, self-centered story. For example, the simple event is, a friend doesn't respond to your text message. That is the bare fact. But papancha immediately kicks in. The mind proliferates. They must be angry with me. What did I do wrong? I knew I shouldn't have said that yesterday. They probably don't like me anymore. I'm always messing up my friendships. I'm going to end up alone. A simple, neutral fact is spun into a whole narrative of personal failure and despair. This is the process that creates the vast majority of our anxiety and emotional suffering. Mindfulness practice is the essential tool for catching papancha in the act. Through mindfulness, we learn to see the initial event clearly before the storytelling mind hijacks it. We learn to see the difference between the first arrow of the event and the 100 second arrows of our own mental proliferation. When we do catch an unwholesome thought taking root, we can practice what is known as noble substitution. This practice is beautifully illustrated in a well-known parable, often attributed to the Cherokee people, known as the story of the two wolves. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A great fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One is evil, he is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, and truth." The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person, too. The grandson thinks about it for a minute, and then asks his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old man simply replies, "The one you feed." This is the very heart of right intention. You are not trying to kill the black wolf to violently suppress your negative thoughts. That only gives it more energy. Instead, you simply withdraw your attention from it and consciously feed the white wolf. When you notice a thought of resentment arising, the black wolf, you acknowledge its presence without judgment, and then you deliberately introduce a thought of loving kindness, the white wolf. You might bring to mind someone you love, or a memory that brings you joy. When you catch yourself lost in anxious fantasies about the future, the black wolf, you gently withdraw from the story and deliberately feed the white wolf of presence by bringing your attention to your breath or to the simple beauty of a tree outside your window. This is not about pretending you don't have negative thoughts. It is a practical, skillful method for retraining your brain, for weakening the neural pathways of negativity and strengthening the pathways of peace, clarity, and kindness. Ultimately, the practice of right intention culminates in developing the habit of the preemptive pause. It is the practice of checking our intention before we speak, before we act. Before you press send on that angry email, pause. Take one conscious breath. Ask yourself, what is my true intention here? Is it to help or to harm? To connect or to dominate? Before you enter into a difficult conversation, pause. Ask, am I entering this with an intention of loving, kindness, and a desire for mutual understanding, or with an intention of proving I am right? This simple pause is a moment of immense power. It is the space in which we can consciously choose to feed the white wolf. It is the moment we take the rudder of our ship firmly in our hands and steer ourselves toward the shore of peace, rather than allowing ourselves to be blown about by the winds of our conditioned reactivity. This is why the Buddha declared that intention is the very essence of karma. An action may look good on the outside, but if it is motivated by a selfish desire for praise or recognition, it plants a complicated seed. Conversely, an action may be misunderstood by others or have unintended negative consequences, but if it was born from a pure intention of compassion and harmlessness, it protects our own mind from the worst of the karmic poisons. The ultimate power to shape our destiny lies not in controlling the world, but in purifying our own heart and mind. The silent, invisible, and diligent work of cultivating right intention is the most profound and impactful practice we can undertake. It is the source from which a life of integrity, peace, and wisdom naturally flows. And it is this cultivated, wholesome mind that gives us the strength and clarity we need to face life's greatest challenges, the unavoidable realities of pain, loss, and sorrow. We have journeyed far into the inner landscape, learning to work with our actions, our words, and our thoughts. We have cultivated a mind of mindfulness and a heart of compassion. We have built a strong and worthy vessel for navigating the river of life. But the river of life, for all its beauty and tranquility, has stretches of turbulent rapids and profound, unavoidable depths. No amount of spiritual practice can prevent the great, universal pains of human existence from arriving at our shore. The path of wisdom does not promise a life free from loss. It does not offer a shield against sickness, old age, and the death of those we hold dear. Instead, it offers us the tools, the strength, and the perspective to navigate these profound sorrows with grace, to hold them in a heart that is vast enough not to be broken by them, and to discover, even in our darkest moments, a source of liberating wisdom. When we are struck by a profound loss, the end of a cherished relationship, a life-altering diagnosis, or the death of a beloved, we are hit by the most powerful of life's first arrows. The pain is real, it is visceral, it is immense. Our instinct, driven by a lifetime of conditioning, is to immediately shoot the second arrow. We resist, we protest. This shouldn't be happening. It's not fair. I cannot bear this. We build a story of victimhood and injustice around our pain. And this story, this resistance to reality, is what transforms the clean, natural pain of grief into the prolonged, tangled, and agonizing state of suffering. The first teaching in the face of loss is therefore the most courageous. We must be willing to feel the pain of the first arrow without reaching for the second. This means, above all, giving ourselves unconditional permission to grieve. There is a great misunderstanding that a spiritual path is one of emotional suppression, of becoming a detached, unfeeling stone. This is the opposite of the truth. The path of awakening is not about feeling less. It is about developing the capacity to feel more, but with a spacious awareness that does not become overwhelmed. It is about cultivating a heart that is so tender and so strong that it can stand in the middle of the fire of great sorrow without being consumed by it. So, you must allow the tears to flow. You must allow the anger at the seeming injustice of the universe to arise. You must allow the profound emptiness and loneliness to be felt. To deny these natural responses is an act of violence against yourself. It is shooting a second arrow of self-judgment on top of the first arrow of loss. This is where our practice of mindfulness becomes our greatest ally. It is the anchor in the storm of grief. When a wave of sorrow washes over you, so immense that you feel you might drown, the practice is to come back to the simple, physical reality of this one breath. Feel the air entering your body. Feel your abdomen rise. Feel the air leaving your body. Feel your abdomen fall. The breath is your anchor to the present moment, a small island of stability in a vast ocean of pain. You are not using the breath to escape the grief or to push it away. You are using it to ground yourself so that you can allow the wave of grief to wash over you without being carried out to sea. You are learning to be with the pain, to hold it in a vast and compassionate awareness rather than becoming it. This is an act of immense courage and self-love. There is a timeless story from the life of the Buddha that speaks directly to this process of transforming grief. A young woman named Kisagotami had an infant son whom she adored, and one day the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful that it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small, lifeless body and went from house to house, desperately begging for medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others turned her away, but one wise man, seeing her profound suffering, directed her to the Buddha. She rushed to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "There is only one medicine that can help you. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed from any house where no one has ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisagotami went from door to door. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course, I will give you a mustard seed." But when Kisagotami asked, "Has anyone in this house ever known death?" the woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, My husband died just last year. Kisagotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had mustard seeds to offer, but every family had also known loss. One had lost a parent, another a child, another a sibling, another a spouse. She began to realize that every house was filled with the sorrow of bereavement. The phrase she heard again and again was, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As the sun began to set, the profound truth of the Buddha's lesson dawned on her. Her unbearable, personal agony was not hers alone. It was the shared, universal inheritance of all human beings. Her grief was not a unique punishment. It was the price of love in an impermanent world. With this realization, the frantic energy of her personal despair began to soften and dissolve into a vast, compassionate understanding of the human condition. She returned not with a mustard seed, but with a transformed heart, ready to truly begin her spiritual path. Kisagotami's journey is our journey. Our own deep losses, as personal as they feel, are our doorway to this same universal truth. The pain we feel cracks our heart open, and in that brokenness, we find our connection to all beings who have ever loved and lost. Our grief becomes our teacher. It teaches us, more powerfully than any book or any lecture, the profound truth of anicca, of impermanence. It forces us to confront the reality that everything we love, including our own bodies, is a temporary gift, a beautiful wave that will inevitably return to the ocean. To fight this law is to suffer. To accept this law, to hold it in our hearts with wisdom, is the beginning of peace. This wisdom also opens us up to the comforting truth of interconnectedness, or interbeing. When a person we love dies, they do not simply vanish from existence. A person is not a solid, separate entity. They are a manifestation of countless causes and conditions. When they die, they do not become nothing. They simply de-manifest from their physical form and continue in countless other ways. The person you loved continues in you, in your memories, in your habits, in the way you laugh, in the values they taught you. They continue in the lives of everyone they touched. They continue in the earth to which their body returns. Thich Nhat Hanh uses the metaphor of a cloud. A cloud in the sky is beautiful, but when it is no longer a cloud, it has not died. It has become the rain, the river, the tea in your cup, the steam rising from your breath. It has changed its form. Seeing our loved ones in this way does not erase the pain of their physical absence, but it can soften the hard edges of our grief and replace the feeling of absolute loss with a sense of gentle continuation. Finally, our personal grief, when held with mindfulness and wisdom, becomes a gateway to boundless compassion. Having walked through the fire of our own loss, we can now understand the pain of others in a way we never could before. When we hear of another's tragedy, our heart no longer responds with mere sympathy or pity. It responds with true empathy, a deep resonance that says, "I know, I understand." Our own wound becomes a source of healing for others. We become less self-centered, more aware of the fragile, precious nature of life, and more motivated to act in ways that reduce suffering in the world. This is the ultimate alchemy of the spiritual path. Our greatest pain is transformed into our greatest strength, our deepest sorrow into our most profound compassion. Facing loss is not about getting over it or moving on as if nothing happened. It is about learning to integrate the loss into who we are, allowing it to deepen us, to soften us, and to open our hearts to the profound, shared mystery of life and death. And with this strong, open, and resilient heart, we are now ready to face not just our personal sorrows, but the challenges of living in a complex and often troubled world. Having journeyed inward to face our deepest personal sorrows, learning to hold them with a wise and compassionate heart, we must now turn that heart outward to face the world. For our practice is not a retreat from life, but a deeper engagement with it. And the world we must engage with is often a tumultuous and challenging place. We are bombarded daily by a relentless stream of news detailing conflict, injustice, and disaster. Our social landscapes are often polarized and filled with anger. We encounter people in our daily lives who are stressed, reactive, and suffering. The great question for the spiritual practitioner is this: how do we keep our hearts open to this world without being consumed by its chaos? How do we care deeply about the suffering of others without becoming paralyzed by anxiety or burned out by despair? How, in short, do we live in the world without being completely overwhelmed by it? The path to this engaged serenity begins with a crucial distinction: the difference between empathy and emotional contagion. Empathy, as we have seen, is the heart of compassion. It is the ability to understand and feel for another's suffering, to connect with their humanity in a moment of pain. It is a skillful and essential quality. Emotional contagion, on the other hand, is an unskillful and draining process. It is the unconscious act of catching the emotions of those around you, like catching a virus. When you are around an angry person, you become angry. When you are submerged in news of despair, you become despairing. You become a psychic sponge, soaking up all the negativity of the world until you are heavy, saturated, and unable to function. This is not compassion. In fact, it hinders compassion. A person who is drowning cannot save another person who is drowning. To be of any real service to the world, we must first learn to maintain our own footing on solid ground. Imagine a skilled and compassionate surgeon preparing for a difficult operation. She must have complete empathy for her patient. She must understand the gravity of their illness and be deeply motivated by the desire to heal them. But during the surgery, she cannot allow herself to feel the full physical agony of the patient. If she did, her hands would tremble, her judgment would be clouded, and she would be unable to perform the precise, life-saving actions required. Her great skill lies in her ability to pair a compassionate heart with a clear, steady, and balanced mind. This is the model for our engagement with the world. We must train ourselves to feel the world's pain without becoming lost in it, to keep our hearts soft and open, but our minds clear and stable. This highest form of stability, this unshakable peace in the face of life's turbulence, is known as equanimity. Equanimity, or upekkha in the Pali language, is the crown jewel of the four divine abodes of the heart, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. It is perhaps the most misunderstood of these qualities. Equanimity is not indifference, it is not apathy, and it is not a cold detachment. It is a profound, spacious, and radical balance of mind. It is born from a deep understanding of the laws of karma and impermanence. It is the ability to see the bigger picture, to zoom out from the immediate crisis and recognize the vast, intricate web of causes and conditions that have led to this moment. It is the wisdom that understands that we cannot control everything, that life is an unending flow of arising and passing away, of pleasure and pain, of gain and loss, of praise and blame. A mind cultivated in equanimity does not get thrown off balance by these 8 worldly winds. When praise comes, it is received with gratitude, but the mind doesn't become inflated, knowing that praise is impermanent. When blame comes, it is felt, but the mind doesn't collapse in despair, knowing that blame is also just a passing phenomenon. Equanimity allows us to care deeply, to act with immense passion and commitment, but to release our clinging to the results. It is the peace that comes from doing our best and then letting go. It is the quiet strength that allows us to stand in the midst of chaos without becoming chaos ourselves. The most beautiful symbol for this quality of being is the lotus flower. The lotus has its roots deep in the dark, smelly mud at the bottom of a pond. This mud represents the suffering, the chaos, the messiness of our human world, the greed, the conflict, the sorrow. The stem of the lotus must then grow up through the murky, unclear water, which represents our own journey of practice, navigating our own confusion and delusions. But finally, the blossom of the lotus opens into the clean air and the bright sunlight, and it is perfectly pure, pristine, and beautiful. Not a single drop of mud stains its petals. The essential point is this: the lotus blossom is not disconnected from the mud, it is nourished by it. It is because of the mud that the lotus can exist at all. This is the model for our lives. To be like the lotus is not to try to escape the mud of the world, but to be so deeply rooted in our practice that we can live in the midst of it, draw nourishment from it, and yet remain with a heart and mind that are unstained by its poisons. This may sound like a lofty goal, but the practice of developing this resilience begins with very simple, practical tools. One of the most effective is to create for yourself a portable meditation hall. This is something you can access anytime, anywhere. When you feel a surge of overwhelm, perhaps from reading a disturbing news article, or after a difficult interaction, the practice is to simply stop, pause, whatever you are doing, and then consciously and deliberately take 3 deep, mindful breaths. With the first breath, breathe in and feel the tension and agitation. Breathe out and release it. With the second breath, breathe in and feel your body, the sensation of your feet on the floor, the feeling of the air on your skin. Breathe out and come home to the present moment. With the third breath, breathe in and ask yourself, what is the wisest and most compassionate way to proceed from here? Breathe out and rest in the clarity that arises. These 3 breaths are a sacred refuge. They are a circuit breaker that can interrupt the downward spiral of anxiety or anger in a matter of seconds. They bring you back to the lotus blossom of your own clear awareness. From this place of centered peace, we can then choose how to act. And this is the final key. We learn to act from a place of peace, not in order to get to a place of peace. A decision made in a state of panic or anger will almost always be an unskillful one, planting seeds for future conflict. An action born from a quiet, clear mind has an infinitely greater chance of being effective and beneficial. The greatest gift you can bring to a chaotic family argument, a stressful board meeting, or a troubled community is not your outrage or your anxiety. It is your own non-anxious, centered presence. This calm clarity is not passive. It is a powerful, active force for positive change. It allows you to see things that are invisible to an agitated mind, to hear what is truly being said beneath the angry words, and to find creative, compassionate solutions that were previously unimaginable. We do not have to choose between having inner peace and being an effective agent for good in the world. We come to see that inner peace is the very source of our most effective, sustainable, and wise action. So, we learn to live as the lotus. We stay rooted in the messy, complex reality of the world. We do not turn away from its suffering, but we cultivate an inner refuge of mindfulness, compassion, and equanimity that allows us to remain centered and clear. We learn to feel the pain of the world without being drowned by it. We learn to act with strength and conviction, while letting go of our attachment to the outcomes. This is the great balancing act of the spiritual path. It is the integration of our deepest inner work with our lived, outer experience. And as we look back on the path we have traveled in this exploration, from understanding our suffering to purifying our actions, our words, and our thoughts, to cultivating a heart of boundless compassion and a mind of unshakable equanimity, we may see that these are not separate, isolated practices. They are all facets of a single, brilliant jewel. They are all interwoven threads of a complete and coherent path. It is now time to step back and look at the breathtaking design of this tapestry as a whole, the unified structure for liberation known as the Noble Eightfold Path. We have journeyed through many landscapes of the mind and heart. We have explored the nature of our deepest anxieties, the hidden mechanics of our habits, the power of our intentions, and the boundless capacity of our hearts for compassion and peace. We have gathered a collection of profound and practical tools: mindfulness, meditation, loving, kindness, and the art of letting go. Now is the time to assemble these individual pieces, to see how they fit together into a single, elegant, and comprehensive architecture for awakening. This grand design is the very heart of the Buddha's teaching. It is his answer to the fundamental question of human suffering. It is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. It is the Noble Eightfold Path. To appreciate the beauty of this path, we must see it in its original context. The Buddha approached the human condition with the wisdom of a master physician. First, he made a diagnosis. The first noble truth is that in life there is suffering, or dukkha, fundamental dissatisfaction and unease. Second, he identified the cause of the illness. The second noble truth is that suffering is caused by craving, by the thirst and clinging that are fueled by the three poisons of greed, aversion, and delusion. Third, he offered a prognosis, a message of hope. The third noble truth is that there can be an end to this suffering, a state of profound peace and liberation known as nibbana. Finally, the master physician writes the prescription. He provides the specific, detailed, and practical course of treatment that will lead to a complete cure. This prescription is the fourth noble truth, the Noble Eightfold Path. It is crucial to understand this framing. The path is not a set of divine commandments to be followed out of blind faith or fear of punishment. It is a pragmatic, therapeutic, and eminently logical course of action designed to heal our minds and free us from our self-inflicted wounds. The Buddha himself compared the path to a raft, skillfully built for the sole purpose of crossing from the shore of suffering to the shore of liberation. Once you have reached the other side, he said, you do not cling to the raft and carry it on your back. You set it down and walk on, free. This path is a tool, a vehicle, a way of life to be cultivated and experienced, not a dogma to be worshipped. This comprehensive path is traditionally organized into a threefold training that addresses every aspect of our being: our wisdom, our ethical conduct, and our mental discipline. This structure itself is a work of genius, ensuring that the path is balanced, grounded, and holistic. The first division is panya, or wisdom. This is the development of a clear and accurate understanding of reality. It is the blueprint for our spiritual house. The second division is sila, or ethical conduct. This is the practice of living in a way that causes no harm to ourselves or others. It is the solid, stable foundation upon which the house is built. The third division is samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the direct training of the mind, developing the focus, clarity, and stability needed to build the house. It is the skilled labor and the powerful tools. These three trainings are not sequential. They are developed simultaneously, each one supporting and deepening the others. Let us begin with the division of wisdom, which contains the first two path factors. The very first is sama, ditti, or right view. This is the foundation of the entire path. It is the correct map. If you are trying to navigate a forest with an incorrect map, your effort will be wasted, and you will only become more lost. Right view is the intellectual and, eventually, the experiential understanding of the fundamental laws of existence that we have been exploring. It is understanding the Four Noble Truths. It is seeing clearly the law of karma, the truth of impermanence, anicca, and the profound insight into not-self, anatta. Right view is the lens that corrects our distorted vision of reality. It is the wisdom that allows us to see that clinging to that which is impermanent leads to suffering, and that letting go leads to peace. It is the aha moment, when we see the empty boat and our anger dissolves. The second factor of the wisdom division is sama, sankappa, or right intention. If right view is the map, right intention is the compass that aligns our heart with the map's direction. It is the conscious choice to orient our lives toward wisdom and compassion. As we have seen, this involves the cultivation of three wholesome intentions: the intention of renunciation or letting go as opposed to craving, the intention of loving, kindness, as opposed to ill will, and the intention of harmlessness as opposed to cruelty. Right intention is the practice of becoming the gardener of our mind, ensuring that the seeds we plant with our thoughts are in harmony with the truths we have come to understand through right view. Next, we come to the division of sila, or ethical conduct. This is where our inner understanding begins to manifest as outer behavior. It is about translating our wholesome intentions into a life of integrity and non-harming. This division contains three path factors. The first is samma vacha, or right speech. This is the practice of using our words skillfully and compassionately, abstaining from lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. It is speaking in a way that is truthful, kind, helpful, and timely. The second is samma kammanta, or right action. This concerns our physical behavior. At its core, it is the commitment to live by the 5 basic ethical precepts: to abstain from killing or causing harm to living beings, to abstain from taking what is not freely given, to abstain from sexual misconduct, and to treat relationships with honesty and respect, to abstain from false speech, which is its own path factor, and to abstain from intoxicants that cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness. These are not restrictive rules, but joyful expressions of a heart that wishes no harm. The third factor in this group is samma ajiva, or right livelihood. This is the extension of right action into our professional lives, ensuring that the way we earn our living does not compromise our ethical principles or cause harm to the world. It is the great practice of integrating our spiritual path with our daily work. Finally, we arrive at the division of samadhi, or mental discipline. This is the direct, hands-on training of the mind itself. It contains the final 3 path factors. The first of these is samma vayama, or right effort. This is the gentle, persistent, and joyful energy that fuels the entire path. It is the practice of feeding the white wolf. Right effort is fourfold. It is the effort to prevent unwholesome thoughts from arising, the effort to abandon unwholesome thoughts that have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome thoughts that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and perfect the wholesome thoughts that are already present. It is the steady, patient work of tending our inner garden. The next factor is samma sati, or right mindfulness. This, as we have explored, is the cornerstone of mental training. It is the capacity to be present with our experience in a balanced and non-judgmental way. Right mindfulness is the clear-seeing awareness that allows us to practice all the other path factors. It is mindfulness that notices the arising of a harsh intention, allowing us to apply right effort to let it go before it becomes harsh speech. It is the essential quality of presence and clarity. The final factor of the path is samma samadhi, or right concentration. This is the ability to unify the mind and sustain its focus, as developed in formal meditation. If mindfulness is the lamp, concentration is the focused beam of that lamp. It is this highly concentrated, stable mind that has the power to see deeply into the nature of reality, to penetrate the illusions of permanence and a separate self, and to fully realize the liberating wisdom of right view. It is essential to see that these 8 factors are not a linear sequence of steps to be mastered one by one. They are a holistic system where each element supports and enhances all the others, creating a powerful upward spiral of growth. For example, as you practice right mindfulness, Factor 7, you become more aware of your speech patterns. This awareness helps you to practice right speech. Factor 3, speaking more kindly and truthfully, reduces inner conflict and guilt, which in turn makes it easier to calm the mind and achieve right concentration. Factor 8, a more concentrated mind sees the truth of impermanence more clearly, which deepens your right view. Factor 1, this deeper wisdom naturally gives rise to a stronger right intention. Factor 2, to live compassionately. This upward spiral is the dynamic, living heart of the path. Each part works in synergy with all the others, creating a life that becomes progressively more peaceful, wise, and free. This noble eightfold path is the Buddha's great gift to humanity. It is a complete, practical, and profound roadmap that guides us out of the tangled forest of our own suffering. It honors the complexity of our human experience by addressing our intellect, our ethics, and our deepest psychological patterns. It is a path of balance, walking the middle way between extreme asceticism and mindless indulgence. It is the raft, skillfully constructed and offered freely. It is a path to be walked, not just admired. But what happens on this walk? We are imperfect beings. Our steps will falter. We will lose our way. We will stumble and fall. What then? Does the path demand perfection? The Buddha, with his deep understanding of human nature, knew that the path must also include a way to work with our own imperfections, a way to get back up when we fall. It is to this compassionate and crucial aspect of the journey, the practice of self-forgiveness, that we must now turn. Having been presented with the noble eightfold path, a perfect and comprehensive map to liberation, the earnest practitioner is often faced with a new and subtle form of suffering. We look at this beautiful, pristine map, and then we look at our own messy, imperfect lives, and a feeling of inadequacy can arise. We create a new ideal in our minds, the perfect practitioner. This ideal person never gets angry, always speaks with kindness, meditates with perfect focus, and floats through life with serene grace. We then measure ourselves against this impossible phantom, and with every inevitable stumble, with every mistake, we judge ourselves harshly. This quest for spiritual perfection is one of the ego's most cunning traps. It is the old habit of striving and seeking, dressed up in virtuous, spiritual clothing. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the path. The path is not about becoming a perfect, flawless statue. It is about becoming a resilient, compassionate, and wise human being. And the ground of that wisdom is paved with our own mistakes. The journey is not about never falling down. It is about learning how to get back up with grace and kindness. We must begin by radically reframing our relationship with our own failures. Our mistakes are not obstacles on the path. They are the path. They are not signs that the practice is failing. They are proof that the practice is working. For it is the practice of mindfulness that allows us to even see our mistakes clearly for the first time. Imagine you have committed to practicing right speech. You feel centered and calm. Then, in a moment of stress, you are cut off in traffic and you lash out, shouting with anger. The perfectionist mind immediately declares, "You failed. You are a terrible practitioner. All that meditation is useless." This is the voice of the inner critic, the voice of suffering. The wise mind, the compassionate mind, responds very differently. It says, How fascinating. Here is a precious opportunity to learn. This lapse is a bright, flashing light, illuminating a deep pattern of conditioning. It is a chance to investigate. What were the underlying causes and conditions? Was I tired? Was I feeling rushed and stressed even before this happened? What was the story I told myself about the other driver? What did the anger feel like in my body? The mistake, when met with this kind of curious and non-judgmental attention, becomes our greatest teacher. It reveals the hidden corners of our mind, the deep-seated habits that are the true source of our suffering. Without these moments of falling down, we would remain blissfully ignorant of the very things we need to heal. Each stumble is a lesson, each lapse a revelation. To learn these lessons, we must cultivate the art of self-forgiveness. This is not a matter of making excuses for our harmful behavior or developing a lax attitude. It is a courageous act of applying the same compassion to ourselves that we are learning to extend to others. It is the recognition that we, too, are suffering beings, often acting out of our own ignorance, fear, and pain. The process of forgiving ourselves can mirror the process of forgiving another. It begins with a clear and honest acknowledgement of the action. We look at what we did without flinching and without rationalizing. We say to ourselves, I spoke with harsh words. My intention was unskillful. I caused harm. This honest accounting is essential. Then comes the heart of the practice. We connect with the suffering that drove the action. We practice seeing our past self as another empty boat. What were the currents that were moving that boat? Perhaps it was the current of deep-seated insecurity, of exhaustion, of a long-held fear. We see that the action did not arise from a place of evil, but from a place of delusion and pain. We can then offer ourselves the same compassion we would offer a friend who has made the same mistake. We can place a hand on our own heart and silently offer phrases of metta to ourselves. I forgive myself for acting from a place of suffering. I did the best I could with the awareness I had at that moment. May I learn from this experience. May I be free from the conditions that lead me to cause harm. May I be at peace. This is not about letting yourself off the hook. It is about releasing yourself from the prison of shame and self-recrimination, which are toxic, useless states of mind that only plant more seeds of suffering. True forgiveness is coupled with a gentle but firm resolve, a promise to ourselves to use the wisdom gained from this mistake to be more mindful and skillful in the future. This balanced approach is perfectly captured in the Buddhist understanding of right effort. We often associate effort with a kind of tense, aggressive striving, but right effort is gentle, patient, and, above all, wise. The great Thai meditation master Ajahn Chah used a beautiful metaphor to explain this to his students. His Western students would often complain endlessly about their mental defilements, their persistent thoughts of lust, anger, and doubt. They wanted to vanquish them, to be rid of them forever. Ajahn Chah would lead them out into the monastery's forest courtyard. He would point to the ground, which was always covered with leaves, twigs, and bark from the giant trees overhead. He would say, "This monastery is messy, isn't it? Leaves are always falling. Do you want me to try to catch every leaf before it hits the ground? Do you think I should get angry at the trees for being so messy?" He would then explain, "The practice is not to stop the leaves from falling. That is the nature of the trees. The mind is the same. Its nature is to drop leaves of thought. My job is not to live in a state of constant, frantic anxiety about the leaves. My job is simply to sweep the courtyard every morning. I do my sweeping, I keep the path clean, and then I let it be." This is the essence of right effort and self-compassion. The falling leaves are our mistakes, our unwholesome thoughts, our moments of forgetfulness. They are a natural part of being a human being with a mind. The perfectionist tries to catch every leaf, to achieve a perfectly spotless inner world, and this is an exhausting and impossible task that leads to burnout. The wise practitioner understands that leaves will fall. Their practice is simply to sweep the mind regularly and patiently. We sit in meditation each day, sweeping. We practice mindfulness throughout the day, sweeping. When we notice a mess of angry thoughts, we gently sweep them away by returning to our breath or cultivating a thought of loving kindness. We do our sweeping, and we let the rest be. We don't expect perfection. We don't berate the trees for shedding. This is the quality of gentle, steady persistence, like water wearing away a stone, not with force, but with constancy. The path of awakening is a marathon, not a sprint. A marathon runner who falls down does not lie on the ground berating themselves for their clumsiness. They get up, dust themselves off, check for any injuries, and then they continue running, perhaps with a little more awareness of the terrain. We must learn to treat ourselves with this same practical and compassionate spirit. When we embrace our imperfections as part of the path, when we learn to forgive ourselves for being human, a profound shift occurs. The harsh inner critic, the relentless drill sergeant in our head, begins to soften and transform. It becomes the voice of a wise and trusted friend, one who supports us, encourages us after a fall, and always believes in our capacity to wake up. This shift from self-judgment to self-compassion releases an immense burden. It makes the heart light, and it is in this newfound lightness, this spaciousness created by letting go of the need to be perfect, that a new quality has room to arise, a quality we have perhaps overlooked in our serious striving. This is the quality of joy, the simple, uncomplicated happiness that is waiting to be discovered in the fabric of every moment. Having walked the difficult ground of our own imperfections and learned to meet ourselves with a compassionate and forgiving heart, a new landscape begins to open up within us. The heavy burdens of self-judgment and the relentless striving for perfection begin to dissolve, and in their place, a sense of lightness and spaciousness arises. For so much of our journey, both in life and on this path, our focus has been on dealing with the negative, analyzing our suffering, understanding its causes, and developing skills to manage it. This work is essential, but it is only half of the story. A path that focuses only on the eradication of suffering is incomplete. The other half of the journey, the part that fills the newfound space in our hearts, is the conscious and joyful cultivation of happiness. We live in a culture that is obsessed with the pursuit of happiness. We treat happiness as a commodity, a destination, a prize to be won after a long and arduous struggle. We create mental checklists. I will be happy when I get the promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I buy the house, when I lose the weight, when I retire. We are always chasing happiness, believing it resides somewhere in the future, just beyond the next achievement. This very pursuit is what guarantees our unhappiness, because it constantly reinforces a sense of lack in the present moment. It teaches us that this moment, right here, is not enough. The wisdom of Zen offers a radical alternative. It suggests that happiness is not something to be pursued in the future, but something to be discovered in the present. It is not an acquisition, but a recognition. It is the simple, profound, and often overlooked joy that is available to us in the fabric of every ordinary moment, if only we have the mindfulness to notice it. The practice begins by gently shifting our attention from what is wrong to what is not wrong. Our minds are conditioned with a negativity bias. We are experts at noticing the one leaking faucet in a house that is otherwise perfectly functional. We must retrain this bias. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, encourages us to recognize the conditions of happiness that are already present in our lives. For example, think of a time you had a bad toothache. The pain was all-consuming. In that moment, the greatest happiness imaginable was the absence of that toothache. But what about right now? If you do not have a toothache, are you aware of this incredible condition of happiness? The non-toothache is a wonder. a joy that is present with you right now, but it goes completely unnoticed. We can apply this to countless things. Take a deep breath, feel your lungs fill with air, and then release. This is a condition of happiness. There are millions of people whose breathing is labored and difficult. To breathe freely and easily is a miracle. Do you have eyes that can see? Can you see the colors in the room around you, the shape of the clouds in the sky, the face of a person you love? This is an extraordinary condition of happiness. The practice is to consciously call these conditions to mind. Instead of focusing on the one thing that is causing you stress, take a moment to notice the dozens of things that are not. You have a roof over your head. You have access to clean water. You have a body that, for all its aches and pains, is still a functioning miracle of biology. When you begin to look for these simple, foundational conditions of happiness, you realize you are surrounded by an abundance of riches that you have been taking for granted. This is not about ignoring our problems or engaging in a superficial positive thinking. It is about balancing the scales. It is about acknowledging the whole of our reality, the pleasant and the unpleasant, and realizing that very often the conditions for peace and simple joy far outweigh the conditions for suffering. This joy can be expanded even further when we learn to practice mudita, or sympathetic joy. This is the third of the 4 divine abodes, and it is the practice of rejoicing in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. This is a powerful antidote to the poison of envy and jealousy. Envy comes from a mindset of scarcity. It believes that happiness is a limited resource, and that if someone else gets a piece of the pie, there is less for us. This belief is a source of immense suffering and isolation. Mudita, on the other hand, comes from a mindset of abundance. It understands that joy is not a finite commodity. The happiness of another does not diminish our own. It adds to the total happiness in the world. To practice mudita is to learn to celebrate the success of a colleague, to feel genuine joy for a friend's good fortune, to see a happy couple and to silently wish them, may your joy continue. When you can be happy for the happiness of others, you have an infinite number of reasons to be happy. You are no longer confined to the narrow successes of your own small ego. You can tap into the joy of the entire universe. It is a profound shift from a competitive mind to a collaborative heart. Flowing naturally from this recognition of our own blessings and the joy of others is the cultivation of gratitude. Gratitude is more than just politely saying thank you. It is a profound way of seeing the world, a lens that reveals our utter dependence on and interconnection with everything and everyone else. It is the direct experience of the truth of interbeing. We tend to live with a sense of arrogant self-sufficiency, believing we have earned everything we have. Gratitude dissolves this illusion. Consider the simple act of eating a piece of toast. For this piece of toast to be on your plate, a farmer had to plant the wheat, and for that, there needed to be sun, rain, and soil. Someone had to harvest the wheat, a miller had to grind it into flour, a baker had to mix it with water and yeast and bake it. A truck driver had to deliver it to a store where a clerk sold it to you. Thousands of beings and countless conditions stretching back through time have conspired to bring you this one simple piece of food. When we see the world this way, we realize that we are the recipients of an endless stream of gifts in every moment. Our hearts are naturally filled with a sense of humble awe and thankfulness. This is not a forced exercise. It is the natural emotional response to seeing reality clearly. There is a simple Zen story about a student who asked an old master for his secret to a long and happy life. The master smiled and replied, "It is very simple. When I eat, I just eat. When I am tired, I just sleep." This story beautifully encapsulates the essence of this practice. The master's happiness was not found in achieving great things or having extraordinary experiences. It was found in his ability to be fully present with a simple, appreciative awareness for the most ordinary activities of his life. He tasted every bite of his food. He felt the deep rest of his sleep. He did not eat while planning his afternoon, nor did he lie in bed at night worrying about tomorrow. He was fully present for his life. This is the simple joy that is available to all of us. It is the joy of being alive, of paying attention, of appreciating the miracle of the ordinary. This joy that we cultivate, the joy of simple presence, the joy of others' happiness, the joy of gratitude, is not meant to be a private treasure that we hoard for ourselves. It becomes a boundless, sustainable source of energy. A heart filled with bitterness and resentment has little to offer the world, but a heart overflowing with joy and gratitude naturally seeks to share its abundance. This happiness is not a spiritual endpoint. It becomes the fuel for our compassionate action in the world. It is what allows us to serve others, not from a sense of grim duty or self-sacrifice, but from a place of genuine fullness and delight. It is this transition from cultivating our own inner well-being to offering it as a gift to the world that represents the full blossoming of the spiritual path. It is the practice of waking up, not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of all beings. The long and patient journey inward bears its own unexpected fruit. After learning to sit with our suffering, to forgive our imperfections, and to touch the simple, quiet joy of being present, a profound transformation begins to take place. The heart, once constricted by the anxieties of the small self, begins to open. The energy we once spent on defending our ego, promoting our own agenda, and worrying about our personal fate is liberated. And this liberated energy, like water filling a vessel to the brim, naturally begins to overflow. This overflow is the birth of true service. It is the spontaneous and joyful impulse to share the peace and clarity we have found with a world that is deeply in need of it. The spiritual path, which may have begun as a personal quest to end our own suffering, blossoms into a universal one. We realize that our personal peace is incomplete as long as others are in pain. This is the moment our practice matures from a private endeavor into a compassionate offering. In the Mahayana and Zen traditions of Buddhism, the ultimate embodiment of this awakened heart is the figure of the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is not a god or a supernatural being, but an ideal, a North Star for our own spiritual aspirations. A Bodhisattva is any person who, having journeyed far enough along the path to taste true freedom and touch the shore of liberation, makes a conscious, courageous, and compassionate choice. Instead of simply stepping onto that shore of Nibbana for their own final peace, they turn around. They look back at the churning, tumultuous ocean of worldly existence. They see all the other beings still struggling in the waves, and out of a love so immense it is almost unimaginable, they vow to remain in that ocean, to guide and assist all other beings until every last one has reached the shore of safety. This is the Bodhisattva vow, a commitment of breathtaking scope. It is not a vow of grim duty, but a joyful expression of an expanded identity. The Bodhisattva understands the truth of anatta, of not self, so deeply that the distinction between self and other has become transparent. For them, helping another being is no different from helping their own hand or foot. Their sense of self has expanded to include all of life. The most powerful metaphor for this ideal is that of a person who has found the one, hidden exit from a vast, burning building. Their first, instinctual thought might be to save themselves, but the Bodhisattva is the one who, knowing the way out, turns back into the smoke and flames to find those who are lost, to calm those who are panicked, and to guide them, one by one, toward the exit. They do this not because they are seeking a reward, but because their compassionate heart can do nothing else. The suffering of others is their own suffering. Their liberation is tied to the liberation of all. This ideal can seem impossibly grand, reserved for saints and great masters. We may think, how can I possibly save all beings? I can barely manage my own life. This is a natural and healthy thought, but it is based on a misunderstanding of what service truly means. The Bodhisattva's path does not necessarily begin with heroic, world-changing action. It begins in the small, intimate moments of our daily lives. We must redefine service, taking it down from a lofty, unattainable pedestal and weaving it into the very fabric of our moment-to-moment existence. The most fundamental form of service you can offer another human being is the service of your presence. In our frantic, distracted world, the gift of your full, undivided, and non-judgmental attention is one of the rarest and most healing things you can offer. This is the practice of deep listening. When you are with a friend who is suffering, can you resist the urge to immediately offer advice, to fix their problem, or to turn the conversation back to your own experiences? Can you instead simply be there, holding a space of silent, compassionate presence, and truly listen? Can you listen not just to their words, but to the pain, the fear, or the confusion behind the words? This quality of listening is a profound act of service. It communicates to the other person, on the deepest level, you matter. Your suffering is seen. You are not alone. From this presence, other small acts of service naturally flow. Consider the service of a kind word, a genuine compliment, a word of encouragement offered to a colleague who is struggling with self-doubt, a simple thank you expressed with heartfelt sincerity. These small offerings can change the entire emotional tone of a person's day. They are tiny seeds of metta, of loving kindness, that we can plant in the world around us. Consider the service of a simple smile, offered freely to a stranger on the street, to a tired cashier at the supermarket. It is a momentary flash of connection, a non-verbal message that says, I see your humanity. It costs us nothing, yet it can ripple outward in ways we will never know. We can also see our work, our right livelihood, as a primary vehicle for service. Whatever your job may be, you can bring the Bodhisattva intention to it. If you are a teacher, you can see your work not just as transmitting information, but as nurturing the potential and confidence of your students. If you are a coder, you can see your work not just as writing lines of code, but as building tools that might make people's lives easier or more connected. If you are a cleaner, like the mindful street sweeper, you can see your work as creating order, beauty, and health for others. By infusing our daily labor with the intention to be helpful, to do our work with care and integrity, we transform it from a mere job into a meaningful practice and a genuine offering. Even the practice of forbearance is a form of service. When you are met with anger or reactivity, and you choose not to retaliate, not to add another log to the fire of conflict, you are performing a powerful act of service for the world. You are absorbing a moment of negativity and transforming it into peace within your own heart, stopping a harmful karmic cycle in its tracks. This natural impulse to serve is the logical outcome of all our inner work. As our dedicated practice of mindfulness and meditation weakens the fierce grip of the ego, our sense of a solid, separate self begins to soften. We see with increasing clarity the truth of our interconnectedness with all of life. The rigid boundary between me and you becomes porous and transparent. When we see another suffering, it no longer feels like a distant, abstract problem. We feel a resonance in our own being. Their pain touches our pain. Their joy touches our joy. Helping them ceases to be a moral duty or a reluctant chore. It feels as natural and as necessary as pulling a thorn from our own hand. Our circle of compassion, which began with ourselves, has now expanded to include the entire world. From this expanded perspective, we realize a profound truth. The single greatest gift you can offer to the world is your own awakened consciousness. It is your own inner peace. An anxious and agitated person, no matter how good their intentions, radiates anxiety and agitation into their family, their workplace, and their community. They add to the collective stress of the world. A peaceful, centered, and compassionate person, on the other hand, radiates these qualities effortlessly. Their very presence has a calming and healing effect on those around them. They become a walking, breathing refuge for others. This is the wisdom of the candle. A single, small candle, once lit, can light thousands and thousands of other candles. In sharing its flame, its own light is not diminished in any way. In fact, the more candles it lights, the brighter the entire room becomes. Your peace, your clarity, your wisdom are like that flame. They are not a finite resource that gets depleted when you share them. They are a renewable, boundless energy. The more you share your peace with others through a kind word, a patient ear, or a simple act of help, the more the collective light of peace grows in the world, and the more your own inner light is strengthened and affirmed. The purpose of the spiritual path, therefore, is not to achieve a state of sublime personal bliss and then retire from the world. It is not an escape, it is a training. It is the preparation for a life of engaged, joyful, and effective service. We work on ourselves so that we can be of greater benefit to others. We calm our own minds so that we can bring clarity to a confused world. We heal our own hearts so that we can help mend the broken hearts of others. This is the full and beautiful blossoming of the path. It is the ultimate expression of a life lived with meaning, purpose, and a profound, unshakable joy. And so, we stand at the culmination of this long journey, having explored the path from the initial recognition of our suffering to the final, joyful expression of service. We have come full circle. It is now time to take one last look back at the great river of life, the river of cause and effect, and to summarize the two fundamentally different ways one can live within its flow. It is the ultimate contrast between a life lived in the dream state of unconscious reactivity and a life lived with the skill, wisdom, and grace of an awakened heart. It is the difference between being swept away by the river and learning to surf its magnificent waves. We have arrived at the end of our long exploration, at the final vantage point from which we can look back and see the entire landscape of the path we have traveled. We began with a feeling so common to us all, the sense of being stuck, of being helplessly carried along by currents we did not understand, repeating the same patterns of anxiety, frustration, and dissatisfaction. We began, in essence, asleep in the great, unseen river of karma. Now, having gathered the tools of wisdom and compassion, we can contrast that state of dreaming with the vibrant, dynamic, and joyful reality of a life that is fully awake. This is the ultimate choice before us: to remain a passive dreamer in the current, or to become a skillful surfer on the magnificent waves of life. Let us first remember what it feels like to be asleep in the river. This is our default state, the conditioned existence we are born into. In this state, we do not even know we are in a river. We believe our small, isolated raft of self is a solid, permanent piece of land. We are buffeted by the currents of cause and effect, yet we are convinced we are in complete control, or conversely, we feel like a powerless victim of a cruel and random fate. The currents of greed and craving pull us relentlessly toward any piece of glittering driftwood, promising a moment of pleasure, only to have it slip through our fingers. The currents of aversion and anger have us violently paddling away from any perceived threat, any uncomfortable feeling. exhausting ourselves in a futile battle against the river's natural flow. Asleep in the river, we are tormented by the truth of impermanence, seeing it not as a neutral law, but as a personal enemy. When the river brings us a moment of joy, a beautiful lily pad floating by, we cling to it desperately, trying to nail it to our raft, and then we suffer immensely when the current inevitably carries it away. When the river brings us a storm, we are filled with terror and rage, believing we are entitled to perpetual sunshine. The central delusion that fuels this entire dream state is the fierce belief in the solidity of our raft. This is the delusion of a separate self, or anatta misunderstood. We polish our raft, we defend it from other rafts, we define our entire existence by its size and its decorations. We fail to see that our raft is made of the very same water and wood as the river itself, that it is not, and has never been, separate from the flow. This is the life of the dreamer, a life of confusion, of being pushed and pulled by unseen forces, of reacting to the inevitable changes of the river with fear and anger, forever caught in a cycle of brief satisfactions and prolonged, repetitive suffering. Then, one day, something shifts, perhaps through a moment of great suffering or a moment of quiet grace. The dreamer's eyes flicker open. For the very first time, they don't just feel the current, they see it. They recognize that they are in a vast, flowing river. This is the moment of awakening. This is the dawn of right view. The first instinct might be panic, the realization of the river's immense power. And so, the first tool of the newly awakened soul is to find an anchor. This anchor is right mindfulness, and its rope is the breath. By attaching our awareness to the simple, steady rhythm of the breath, we stop being so violently tossed about. We find a small measure of stability, a center of calm in the midst of the motion. From this stable vantage point, we can begin to study the river. We learn to see its patterns, its laws. We learn to see how our own angry thoughts create turbulent eddies downstream. We learn to see how our acts of kindness create smooth, peaceful currents. We are no longer just a victim of the river, we are becoming a student of it. This is where the metaphor must shift, from the passive stability of an anchored boat to the dynamic, joyful engagement of a master surfer. For the goal of the path is not simply to stay still and avoid the currents. The goal is to learn to dance with them. The awakened life is the life of the surfer. A master surfer does not command the ocean. They do not stop the waves. Their mastery lies in their profound and intimate understanding of the water. They have spent years feeling its rhythms, respecting its power, and learning how its energy moves. In the same way, the wise person studies the Dharma, the laws of reality, not to conquer them, but to harmonize with them. The surfer's skill is a beautiful metaphor for the Noble Eightfold Path in action. Their unwavering focus on the wave they are riding is right concentration, made possible by a foundation of right mindfulness. Their board, strong and reliable, is the integrity of their ethical conduct, commitment to right action, right speech, and right livelihood, which gives them a stable platform. The constant, subtle adjustments they make with their body, shifting their weight to respond to the changing face of the wave, is right effort. And their direction, their choice of which wave to ride and how to ride it, is guided by right intention and right view. Look at how the surfer relates to the waves. An ordinary swimmer sees a giant, powerful wave approaching and is filled with fear. They are about to be crushed. The surfer sees the same wave and is filled with exhilaration. They see an opportunity for a magnificent ride. This is how the awakened mind relates to life's challenges. A difficult situation, a great loss, a profound change. These are life's great waves. The sleeping dreamer is overwhelmed and crushed by them. The awakened surfer, while respecting their power, sees them as an opportunity to apply their skill, to deepen their wisdom, and to experience the thrill of engaging with life at its most intense. Their balance on the board is their equanimity, their upeka. They are balanced between the exhilaration of the ride and the calm acceptance of a potential wipeout. They are fully engaged, yet fully at peace. This leads us to the most liberating realization of all. The ultimate freedom is not found by finally paddling to some distant, peaceful shore and escaping the ocean forever. There is no other shore. The ocean is all there is. The ultimate freedom is the freedom of the ocean. It is the joy of the surfer who has become so attuned to the water, so skillful in their dance, that the separation between themselves and the wave dissolves. They are no longer a small, separate self fighting against the ocean. They are the ocean's own consciousness, awake and joyfully expressing itself as a wave. The very forces that once seemed so threatening, the power, the unpredictability, the constant change, are now the very source of their joy and their freedom. This is the promise of the path we have explored. It is the journey from being a piece of driftwood tossed about in the dark to becoming a conscious and skillful surfer, dancing in the light on the river of life. It is the shift from a life of fearful reaction to a life of joyful, creative, and compassionate response. You do not stop the river of karma. You cannot, but you can learn to read its currents. You can learn to swim with skill. You can learn to build a raft. And ultimately, you can learn to stand up on your own 2 feet and surf, finding your unshakable peace and your most profound joy not in an escape from the river, but in a masterful, loving, and awakened dance with the flow of life itself. This is the end of suffering and the beginning of true living. We began this journey together in a place familiar to so many of us, a place of quiet unease, a feeling of being caught in a current, endlessly repeating a life that felt both overwhelming and strangely empty. We saw ourselves as dreamers, asleep in the river of cause and effect, tossed about by waves of anxiety and craving that we did not understand. On this long journey, we have sought to gently wake from that dream. We have looked directly at the nature of the river, understanding its laws of impermanence and its currents of karma. We have examined the phantom-like nature of the separate self we work so hard to defend, and we have been given a map, the Noble Eightfold Path, a practical guide for navigating these waters with skill, wisdom, and an open heart. We have learned that the ultimate goal is not to fight the river, but to become a master surfer, dancing with the waves of life with a balanced and joyful mind. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this journey, let it be this: peace is not a destination. It is not a distant shore you will one day arrive at when all your problems have been solved. When the world has finally arranged itself to your liking, the river of life will always have its share of turbulent waters, of unexpected storms, of loss, and of pain. The peace that we seek is not found in the condition of the river, but in the skill of the surfer. It is an inner quality, a refuge built within your own heart and mind through the patient cultivation of awareness, compassion, and wisdom. It is the unshakable calm that comes from knowing that while you cannot control the waves, you can learn to ride them. This is the most empowering news in the world, because it means the source of your peace is not out there, in the unpredictable chaos of the world, but right here, within you. This exploration is now drawing to a close, but your journey is just beginning. The path does not unfold on a screen. It unfolds in the moments of your life. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with the simplest and most profound act, the conscious turning of your attention to a single breath. That is the first step. That is the homecoming. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to acquire anything new. All the seeds of awakening, the seeds of peace, of clarity, of boundless compassion, and of unshakable joy are already within you, waiting patiently in the soil of your own heart. Your task is simply to provide them with the light of your attention and the water of your gentle, persistent effort. The power to wake up from the dream has been in your hands all along. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free.